conference will now be recorded.
Sorry about that. So a couple of quick notes, and really that sort of is a good intro to it. I think most of us who've been in this room before for a meeting know that the acoustics are awful. They really suck. And if people don't speak into the mic like I am, then they don't get heard. And especially for the folks who are online tonight, their only hope of hearing what's going on is again from the mic through the speaker that gets picked up over here with the camera. These mics are designed, unlike what I just showed you, not to feedback, so they're called proximity mics. You need to be close to it. You hold it out here, you don't hear me very well. And everybody's inclination is to do this when you talk. So this includes you guys up here. You've got to get, pretty much eat the microphone. Don't be afraid of it. People just won't be able to hear either in the room or up there unless you speak close to the mic. So those are my notes. Oh, one last thing. Our bandwidth is somewhat limited here, and to the extent you cannot use the Wi-Fi, we appreciate it. That will help people at home hear better. Apparently the sound was choppy at our hearing on Monday, and I'm guessing that had something to do with it. So if your phone's connected to the town's Wi-Fi and you're not using it, please turn off your Wi-Fi. Use your 4G or whatever. That's fine, but that will help people at home to hear better. Thanks.
Now I have to figure out where the mic is. It's on. Is that good enough?
Right.
How's this? Is that okay? Yeah. I don't know. All right. Now I have to balance the glasses in the script. Thank you all for coming. I'm Bart Niswanger. I'm the chair of the planning board. It's November 20th. It's 6:32. We're here for a public hearing regarding an application for special permit submitted by BWC Wades Stream LLC, or BlueWave, for a large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installation at 190 Ridge Road. The proposed project overlaps the Water Supply Protection District, therefore requiring a special permit according to Section 9.2 of the Protected Zoning Bylaw for the town of Worthington. The proposed project involves the installation of approximately 7,462 ground-mounted solar photovoltaic panels and associated equipment to produce 3.95 megawatts of direct current. The project area is approximately 27.45 acres in what is currently an open field, and this marks the opening of the hearing. So, in general, solar projects of this kind in Worthington are allowed by right with site plan review as governed by Section 2. We're going to have to, I will pause occasionally to deal with technology, but hopefully they'll mute themselves. Section 8.5 of our bylaws, which was passed in 2017. This project partially overlaps the Water Supply Protection District as defined in Section 9.2, passed in 1990 and amended in 2010, and therefore also requires a special permit with the planning board as a special permit granting authority. The planning board has received both the special permit application and the application for site plan review, and tonight's hearing is a required component of our review of their special permit application. The site plan review application follows a slightly different timeline. We have not yet deemed that application complete and are currently awaiting BlueWave's response to questions we sent them yesterday, primarily related to the battery and energy storage and the agrivoltaic nature of the project. But while tonight's hearing is a legal obligation, it's also an opportunity for the public to learn more about this project. To that end, we will invite BlueWave to present their project and then ask Town Council to give us a summary of the legal landscape for municipalities facing solar developments of this nature. And tonight is an opportunity for us to hear the concerns of the public and other town departments. After the presentations, we will open the hearing for public comment and questions. This hearing is related to the special permit application, which is only required due to the partial overlap of the Water Supply Protection District. Therefore, technically, comments ought to be focused on the protection of the water supply. However, we view this hearing as an opportunity to gather public comment on the entire project, and therefore will happily accept comments and questions on the project as a whole. Some guidelines for the public comment portion, which probably are familiar to most of you since you go to town meeting. Please be sure to sign in on the sign-in sheet over there. Please wait to speak until I recognize you. When you do speak, please stand and state your name and address. Please address your comments and questions to me. I will either answer or ask the applicant or others to answer. Please be polite. Please wait for all to have been heard before you ask to speak again. And finally, it's fine to state that you agree with concerns previously expressed rather than restating the same concerns so we can get home. Finally, this is not the last opportunity to learn about this project or offer your concerns to us. I'm anticipating that this hearing will be continued while we wait for additional information, particularly environmental review. And the site plan review process takes place in open meetings of the planning board, and you may attend, and there will be several, if not many, of those meetings. In both cases, both the special permit and the site plan review, we're in the first phase, a period of information gathering, trying to understand the proposed project and all its implications for the town, but also trying to gather feedback and concerns from the abutters and other residents. Once we close this hearing, which won't happen tonight, I believe, regarding the special permit and or deem the site plan review application complete, we'll move into the second phase where we attempt to mitigate concerns raised during this information gathering phase. So, fellow members of the planning board, I don't know if you have anything to add, but if you don't, I'm going to get on into it and invite BlueWave to present. So we've got technology on our side today, or maybe, so I can put up their slides. Means we can't see people online, so people online, please use the chat to let me know if there's something you need, because I can no longer see you.
Testing. Hello. Hello. I'm now Brown Cup.
Yes.
Hello. Hello. Good?
Yep.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Sims. I'm here with BlueWave. I'm also joined by several members of the team from engineering and legal. We have Tad next to me, Olivia and Drew, and I have several members of the company that are also online. If there are questions that I can't handle, I might point to them. I wanted to start just by reiterating what you just said. While we are here for a special permit hearing, and we saw some of the comments that came in through the site plan review comments that arrived yesterday, we're viewing this as an opportunity to discuss and hear feedback and are open to suggestions and edits. First, I would like to just do a little introduction to BlueWave. For those of you who don't know us, we've been in Massachusetts for 15 years. We just celebrated our 15-year birthday. A community solar development company that in 2022 transitioned from developing, which means we take the project through permitting but don't construct and own, into a fully integrated, what's called an IPP. It's a power owner, and we now develop these projects and own them for the life of the systems. We have developed hundreds of megawatts of solar in the state, and very recently, in the past 5 years, we've made a strong movement towards doing this type of agrivoltaic array, which I can showcase a little bit here. Agrivoltaics is a combination of solar and farming. The idea is putting two things together that you change the design slightly and make both of them work. You don't get 100% of the output of either of them, but you get a lot more than just doing one of them. We view this as a great idea for continuing to develop solar and clean energy infrastructure while not taking over farmland. The idea really is to allow farming to operate inside the array completely. This is a picture from a project that we had in Palmer, where you can see the spacing, which is much greater than conventional solar. It allows tractors to drive up and down the roads and between panels. And some of the other pictures that you will see coming up show the height is much higher than normal, and also to allow for tractors to operate. This is, for us, really the solution. We don't like the idea of clearing forests or taking over farmland, and this idea allows farming to continue, solar to happen, and in the long run, we hope it encourages new farmers to the market while producing reliable, clean electricity. This project also has a component that was required by the state to have a battery storage system. This is a picture from a project that we have under construction in Greenfield currently. I'm going to just try and point this container right here where my mouse is, which is not lining up. I'm sorry, but the container in the back that my mouse is slightly over, that's a battery container. They were installed recently. The idea here is to have two batteries on the equipment pads that are in the middle of the facility. The way these systems work is the solar energy that's produced on the panels goes into the batteries, charges during the day, and discharges throughout the evening and sometimes into the night. We have several different projects that are operating that are very similar to this. We brought the planning board to a project in Palmer that is very similar, has grazing cattle in it. We have another project in Dayton. These are just two of several projects that we've been focusing on recently. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our engineers to introduce some of the site-specific details. The address for this project is 190 Ridge Road. The property is owned by the Cenas, and it takes the solar project takes up about 25 to 27 acres of the 70-acre parcel.
Hi, I'm Olivia Crosby. I am with WSP. I am a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth. We are, myself and my colleague Drew Bardakis, are the civil and permitting consultants on behalf of BlueWave. So in terms of the project, as you can see with the figure on the screen, there are two main arrays to the north and to the south. There is an existing access driveway to the landowner's residence in the center of the property. That will remain, and the existing drive will be expanded as the construction entrance and access to the facility. There will be two concrete equipment pads, one on the northern side of the access and one on the southern side of the access. So centrally located within the project. This is where the transformers and batteries will be located. There's an 8-foot fixed knot game fence surrounding the facility. It is in two locations surrounding the entire southern portion, as well as the entire northern portion, with gates and access to both off of the road. So the landowners will continue using that access to access their residence as well. The electrical components will be underground within the array area, daylighting at the equipment pads and remaining underground until the utility poles along the access road at the point of interconnection. There are stormwater BMPs designed as well. We have designed the project to meet all Massachusetts stormwater standards. There are infiltration trenches, grass swales, filtration strips, as well as culverts that are existing that will be replaced and additional culverts that will be added along the existing access road. And like I mentioned, the stormwater standards have all been met, meaning the post-construction conditions will be improved from the existing conditions. All peak runoff and volume rates will be decreased from existing conditions. So that's kind of the general overview, and I'd be happy to point things out. It's a little small over there, but we can go through the drawings as well. Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
I'm just gonna hop in and ask the people online to mute themselves because somebody's blinking.
Thank you. I wanted to just highlight some of the project schedule that's important to know. Obviously, we are currently going through permitting. That's three permits, two with you. We also have a permit with the Conservation Commission. So those are ongoing. We very likely wouldn't be able to start anytime next year because we have a lot of utility and design work to do still. But the plan then would be to probably start in 2027, and the construction might be 6 to 9 months, and that would put the system operational in 2028. That's really all that I had as far as a presentation. I'm happy to take questions or go wherever you'd like.
Thank you very much. So the next thing on my list is to ask town council to give us a little summary, but planning board, do you have any questions or comments before we go there? Kate does. Get to figure out the link. I'm just gonna, should I move this off screen again?
Well, is it possible for you to show us on the map which portion of the project is in the Water Resource Protection District?
Yeah, give me a minute. Art, I might need you to allow me to share a different.
I think you
So I'll
have control.
I think I have to stop sharing.
Stop sharing and then reshare, yeah. Well, if it pops up in the wrong place, I'll move it over.
The image that's on the screen now, the green is the overlay of the water protection district. The half of the array to the south of that is outside of the district.
And sorry, just to add, the IWPA is also in the most of it's off the property to the north, but there's a small portion in the very northeast corner.
The IWPA is shown on this line, which is also off-site. That's not a bigger district that results in needing to come for the special permit, but the tier
Interim wellhead protection area.
Tier 2.
It's not.
So,
You gotta pass the money.
Sorry.
Take it out of the game.
The interim wellhead protection area is the circular area in that northern portion that Aaron just pointed out.
Here's the circle, mark this.
So it's very hard to see the whatever it was, interim wellhead protection area. It's almost not part of this project. The larger water supply protection district is the green part, and that's what's necessitating the special permit. And I'm just going to say that this is the first time the planning board has seen this map or this plan, and it is a little surprising.
You guys still have excuse me.
We actually just made this today because we assumed that the whole site was in the district, but after, in preparation for presenting, we reached out to the town because this map was not online. So we got the digital format and overlaid it.
Great. I'm glad to see it because I've been looking for it. We'll send it to you. Does that answer? Are you good? Okay. Any other questions before we move along here? Planning board? All right. So next, I'm going to ask Robin Stein to talk a little bit about, with KP Law, Town Council, to talk a little bit about sort of legal aspects of solar in Massachusetts.
That work?
I think it's on.
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Stein. I work at KP Law, we're your town council. Can everyone hear me in the back there?
Get closer.
I think you brought it up. You have it.
Okay, good start. You're right, it does feel awkward to be this close. Apologies. Is that better for folks in the back? Can you all hear me? Okay, excellent. So, some of you may have already heard this information before. This is my first time coming out on this, so if I'm repeating myself for information you've heard previously, bear with me. But Massachusetts, in General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3, it's the 9th paragraph, contains particular protections for solar energy systems. There are solar energy systems defined, as well as structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy. And they are given heightened special protections under Massachusetts law, not quite the same level of protection that you might expect to see for a religious or educational use, but close in many regards. And so that is something you have to keep in mind anytime you're evaluating a solar project, that this isn't the same as evaluating a normal commercial project set under your zoning bylaw. So as your chair has said, in the town, solar projects are generally allowed as of right, subject to site plan review. Site plan review is a non-discretionary type of plan review, meaning it's something the board generally cannot deny absent some very special or unique, say, public safety circumstances. Site plan review really is what it means. You're reviewing how the site is going to be used for the project, not if the site should be used for the project. Special permits have a more discretionary level of review to them. Traditionally, a special permit is something that actually would apply to whether or not the use should happen. In this case, that's not the type of special permit that we're looking at, because we're particularly looking at an overlay district that isn't really a use special permit, but it's a special permit because you're in the protection district. And so that special permit, while it has discretionary components, is really being applied specifically to the criteria in that section of the bylaw, with a particular mind towards the particular purposes that overlay district is designed to protect. And as you saw from the map here today, there's actually a question I had, so I'm glad we resolved it. Only a portion of the lot is in the district, so technically speaking, the improvements and the components of the project in the district are what are really subject to that site plan review in particular. So there are two different legal standards. When it comes to solar, they are more similar than they might be in a traditional project that requires both a site plan review and a special permit, because of the additional protections that 40A applies. We have a little more case law in the last few years giving us guidance on how to apply the solar protections, but it's definitely something that's still evolving. And so if the chair has questions or the board has questions about the night, I'm happy to try to help resolve those.
Thank you. I think the only thing I would ask, and maybe it puts you on the spot, is I know that towns have denied special permits or in some cases tried to deny site plan review and ended up in court. And I'm curious what the sort of history of those cases is.
Sure, I mean, generally speaking, site plan review in general, forget solar, anything, is very difficult to defend a denial. And again, it's meant to be non-discretionary, it's meant to presume the use is already allowed, and now you're reviewing how the use is safely gonna function on the property. So unless very rare situations where there's really some, I always mispronounce the word, intricable, like a condition that cannot be overcome, that cannot be mitigated, you really would have almost no basis to deny a site plan for any use requiring site plan review. Again, because of the heightened protections for special permits, absent some serious, legitimate, specific public health, safety, or welfare concern that you can actually tie to the language in the appropriate bylaw section and the purposes within the bylaw, it would be very difficult to defend the denial of any special permit for solar. There is still a fight in the debate in the law as to whether or not you can or cannot require a special permit at all for solar. I'll say my personal take on that is that the baseline is if the bylaw applies, it applies. And unless a court says you cannot apply it, you can. And we're in a situation where no court has yet said you cannot. So we say you can, but again, subject to the more restricted level and type and scope of review.
Thank you. Anyone else in the planning board have questions?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. Thank you all. So now for the main event. I'm going to ask you to make sure you've signed in. Please wait to speak until I recognize you. When you speak, please stand and state your name and address. Please address your questions and comments to me. Please be polite. Please wait for all to have been heard before you ask to speak again. And it's fine to just simply say you agree with previous concerns rather than restating them. So, it is now open.
I'll be passing the mic.
Yes, also, please use the mic.
John Sullivan for the Huntington Road. I have no problem with solar. I think it's great stuff. Every homeowner has the opportunity to put it in their home. But since I've been with the Worthington Fire District for 35 years, I have questions. You know, the gentleman spoke nicely, nice pictures, everything's great. But you spoke about, we have two corporations here, LLCs, Wavestream and Wardstream, am I correct?
So the question should be addressed to me, and so please keep going.
So, as I looked these up, I found there are Massachusetts Form Limited Liability Company LLC. So my question comes down to this, since we owe a piece of property on Buffington Hill that backs up this complex, who's going to maintain it? Are they going to go by some maintenance program? Is it some liability if there is a problem? And are they going to follow what we call safe installation, where they would have solar panels with proper water protection measures? These are questions I have to begin with. Now, there's a battery loading set up in this place, and everything is great. I'm sure, what's his name with his cars, thinks every battery just works fine. But things happen. And I don't care who you are and what business you're in, they happen. And we need to somehow make sure that there's never any runoff. The lot property behind this project on Ridge Road is ours. We bought it specifically so that we could put in extra wells, etc. This past summer, we had 2 wells go down for lack of water. Now that's not bad because we don't have a huge town. And we've tightened up the entire system over the 35 years I've been here. The problem is, we can't afford to have any issue. So my question is, what foreign liability corporation is going to take care of this? When can we see them or hear from them? What is the maintenance program you have in place? And after the homeowner, or Tim, or whoever it is, that has them put up, what's gonna happen? Do we all just go home and say kumbaya?
Okay, so the question I'm hearing has to do partially with corporate structure, partially with sort of long-term maintenance, and partially with very short-term, just do some, what's the maintenance contract? So are you guys,
Great questions, and I didn't catch your name, but it would be.
John Solar.
John Solar, nice to meet you. It would be great to talk afterwards, I can give you some more. Specifically because of your experience with the fire department, I will talk here and give my position. The questions about the LLC. First, you had two LLC names. Those are both entities that my company owns, and we will continue to own them. There are two, because there are actually two projects that we have in town. We're only here today to do a special permit for one, because we haven't gotten the engineering complete for the second one. So we'll be coming with that shortly. The question about maintenance and the general idea of foreign entities and everything, we are responsible for maintaining the array. It is our facility. If it goes down, that's our responsibility. We will be monitoring it remotely. If something breaks, we'll know and we'll want to fix it. It is all a US-based company. And then I think your last question was about runoff, short-term maintenance, fire risk. The batteries are highly regulated. When we get to the point where we're pulling out a building permit, we'll know the exact technology, the make, model, and the safety programs that are involved with the batteries. And it is standard for that to be a condition on special permits, so that we supply that to the planning board, and along with that, maintenance and emergency response permits. And we'd be happy to do that for us too.
so I think that I heard in the original question, more about sort of the lease structure, let's, in the short term, are you guys out there mowing and dealing with weeds, or is the landowner, what's that relationship?
In this case, in some cases, that's true. We would be responsible for maintaining weeds and grass. In this case, because it's a photovoltaic project, the landowners are currently haying the site, and the intention is to have them continue to hay the site in perpetuity. They would be responsible for that area of maintenance. We would maintain the areas that are not safe for them to enter, like the transformer pads.
And I've been, there's this 8-foot fence with theoretically a 6-inch space underneath, which feels like may very well grow up in something. Is that the farmer's responsibility to keep it clear, or is that you guys?
The fence is the farmer's responsibility to keep clear. The gap at the bottom is to make it easier to maintain.
Okay, and then I think the second part of the question was, you have a lease arrangement with the current owner. If that owner is no longer the owner for whatever reason, how does that carry over to a future owner?
So the setup is that we have leased the land from the landowner and then engaged with them to be the farmer through a separate agreement. So there's two things. The only reason I'm saying that is because there are two things going on. If they stop farming, we would have the obligation to find a new farmer to continue to participate in the program. If they sell their property, our lease is a recorded legal binding document that's on the deed, title, and would transfer to the next owner.
Okay, and then, forgot my question. So you mentioned the program. If can you speak a little bit more? So I think what you said was that you would find a new farmer so that you stayed compliant with the program. Can you speak a little bit more to what that means?
Yeah, in Massachusetts, there's an incentive program that's called SMART, capital S-M-A-R-T. It stands for Solar Mass Renewable Targets. It is how all systems over 25 kW get incentivized to recoup the cost of the investment. And there are a lot of different components to the program. There's a lot of different rules. One of the sections is about this type of agrivoltaic dual-use project. That those types of projects have a heightened level of design criteria so that you meet certain minimums of that the state has said is essential to be a dual-use project. And then there is annual ongoing reporting requirements that you have to make every year to comply with that system to be kept in the program.
So if there's another component too, right? That there's a financial incentive. So if you fell out of compliance, what would happen?
If we fall out of compliance, we would lose a significant part of our incentive that we are banking on to be making the investment in the infrastructure.
So I believe you have a financial incentive to keep a farmer farming that land.
Yes, essentially.
And then I think the last piece of John's question was, I don't know if it's a comment to us, the importance of preventing runoff from this field or from this project, or if it's a question to you. I know that runoff is a concern to us. Do you want to speak to?
Yeah, I think it's a dual answer. I'll talk to it first. First, from a battery safety perspective, there's a lot of different pieces of information out there, and our understanding today with the technology that's prevalent is using water to extinguish a battery of that type is a bad idea. And so I don't know what this battery will be, but I just wanted to comment on the idea of a lot of water being trucked to site to put out a fire is not the plan. As to the site-specific stormwater design, which is more applicable to your point, I'll pass it to the engineers.
I don't know if there was something specific you want spoken to on the runoff that I can address. Okay. Yeah, so the project was designed to any, standard land development project. It's not a large building, large parking lot. It's, mostly impervious area with the exception of the concrete pads and the build out of the existing access road for the gravel. So all of the runoff most of the runoff from the road and from the pads is being treated with vegetative filter strips and infiltration trenches. There is a decrease in off-site runoff volume, and there is a decrease in peak discharge rates off-site. So all of the increase in an impervious area that is, being introduced by the project, which is minimal, is being treated on site, and it will not increase any off-site discharges.
All right. I think we should go on to our next question. So, Helen, I know that you'd like to do a 10-minute presentation, so I'm gonna.
We keep on that topic just right now with our fire chief here. I've got more questions. I know, but I want to keep on this topic.
We're going to come back to it. I think let's hear the presentation and then we'll come back. So if you could hand Helen the mic, that'd be great. I need to mess with the technology a little bit. Helen, you're not in the meeting?
Yes, I
You're only seeing active cameras.
Oh,
You gotta
gotcha.
show everyone.
Why did that switch? There we go. There's everybody. All right, I can't read any of those, so maybe somebody can help me.
The H1.
I think is that one. So Aaron, you're gonna lose the ability to present, I believe. Helen, you should now be able to share your screen. When you do it, it'll pop either up there or, there we go, excellent. There you go. All right.
Sorry, I'm having a time for my ability to put this on a real screen, but you can see this all right, right, in the room? And my husband's holding the microphone for me, so very good. Yeah, this is as I said, 7,462 ground-mounted PV modules. And I'm just gonna go through this a little bit quickly because there's a lot, and I know people have questions. But what I tried to do is, because I've been on the planning board before, and I was involved with the special permit when we did the cell towers, I had some probably greater knowledge than the average person on what happens through the process.
Oh, I'm sorry, back here we can't see screen, we can't see the whole screen at all. It's gonna be text, it's not gonna be, I want to be able to read.
You make it full screen.
Yeah, if you can put it in some sort of slideshow mode.
I think the computer also needs to be, there should be a little.
Projector? No, the projector's going.
The window for the computer. Is that any better?
I'm just gonna keep going. And if there's any real concern with that, I'll try to address it again. You know, as our attorney said to us tonight, there's bylaws that we're talking about. There's section 5.5, which is the special permit, and that is because of the overlay district. There's the section 8.7.3, which is site plan review. And that is something that the planning board is taking a look at as well. So look at the completeness of the application. And then there's section 9.2, which is the special district. Again, that's what requires a special permit. The actions for the planning board tonight or through the deliberation is either to deny, so it's over on the right-hand side for people who, and I'll make this a little bit bigger, right? So to deny the special permit outright as incomplete, to close the hearing and deny the application on substantive grounds, citing issues like fire safety, lack of NFPA 855 fire protection rules, etc. that I'll go into a little bit more. To continue the public hearing indefinitely until after orders of conditions come from the Conservation Commission. That could take upwards to a year. That's probably a 3 to 8 month process at this point. If that were to happen, the bylaw that we have currently on the docket would be locked in place, and that is vulnerable to land court challenges. And then they could approve or constructively approve tonight, which I don't think that they will, because I understand from Barb earlier that some of the questions have just gone to the engineers, although I thought we would have an opportunity to speak to that a little bit more before that went. Sorry. The special permit is, the Worthington zoning bylaw is clear that only one question before it is whether this project will adversely affect the public water supply. And the applicant is required to demonstrate no adverse water input or impact. The application has no groundwater modeling, no peer-reviewed analysis, no orders of conditions from the Conservation Commission, no location, size, or chemical spill containment details on battery storage. Without this substantial evidence in record to support the required finding of no adverse effects, any vote to grant the special permit would be annulled in the first appeal to Superior Court. This slide here shows the prohibited uses in the special water district that we have. I could go through them, but the first one here is business and industrial uses, not agricultural, which is kind of interesting about this dual agricultural use, which manufacturers use or process, store, or dispose of hazardous materials. So I think this is a hazardous material that we're talking about with the best equipment and the battery. The rest of these things are in our zoning bylaws, but I'm happy to share with anyone who would want to see more about it. As of now, as of Monday night, site plan review is incomplete. It's incomplete because, again, the Conservation Commission didn't give us order of conditions. They require a notice of intent from BlueWave. So under our bylaws, the planning board can't approve the site plan review until the applicant is deemed complete. So it will at least be open for a long time, if not denied. The plan was submitted without key data. The application is missing every major engineering deliverable that a plan like this would need. Every single one of them, and I'll go over them. Again, special permit may only be granted after the site plan is complete. So this filing is solely submitted to grandfather the project before the 2026 site suitability framework comes into play. The state of Massachusetts is looking at sites for suitability. Most of Western Massachusetts wouldn't be suitable sites. That's going to come live on March 1st, 2026, which is why we're seeing all of the towns in Western Massachusetts get these applications in to get in under the wire there. So my take here is the board really has no legal authority to approve or conditionally approve or even continuing to debate or deliberate this application. The BESS installation, which is the battery storage system, creates an undue hazard to public safety given the capacity of Worthington's volunteer fire department and the absence of any fire strategy or emergency. So I believe the application should be denied without prejudice, but there's more. There's case law here. An outright denial of an application for special permit must meet all submission requirements of local bylaws. When required materials are not provided, the application is not legally an application. If the town denies, the town is safe in court, and I'm sure Attorney will speak to that a little bit, as burden is on the developer. And that's Massachusetts General Law 40A, Section 11. We have a case law in Massachusetts that's strong authority here. Boards may deny when the record does not contain sufficient information for required findings. The burden of producing all required materials is on the applicant. Without said materials, the board has no basis to make positive findings and must deny. The court held that an application lacking material required under the zoning ordinance is not considered a filing. If the planning board continues instead of denies, they are knowingly violating Chapter 40A by acting as if a deficient filing is valid. That becomes the basis for procedural invalidation of any later approval. Mandamus action to force compliance, land court appeal if they approve for the abutters to enjoy presumptive agreement under Chapter 40A, Section 17. I forgot to mention, my name is Helen Sherry Pollard. I'm the owner of the Worthington Golf Course, and I am a butter on this property, and we would certainly take this to land court. So what's missing in the application? Because the Conservation Commission rejected the RDA on Monday night, there's no notice of intent, no orders of conditions. The stormwater management report required under Mass DEP isn't really there. It's missing fire protection and National Fire Protection Authority 855 compliance materials. It's missing NFPA hazard mitigation analysis. There's no thermal runaway modeling. They're missing emergency response plan. There was no plan submitted. They're missing fire access and suppression plans. They're missing utility confirmation from Eversource, utility impact, hosting capacity and assessment. They're missing access road construction plans. They're missing full environmental impact materials for the recharge area. They're missing decommissioning plans. They're missing stormwater management reports, landscaping screening plans. Only partial erosion and settlement control plans have been given to us, and they're not tied to the best build out. They're missing construction phasing. I don't consider what we saw tonight phasing a plan required for industrial solar. They're missing noise and light glare studies. They're missing LiDAR-based topographic analysis, given the steep slopes here. They're missing legal instruments for site control, for easements, for title reports. They're missing evidence of insurance. My estimates at very low level are $50 million for an incident. They're missing or have inappropriate decommissioning surety. The planning board, as this is shown to us, must deny the application. They must deny the special permit application. They must deny the site plan review application. The continuance will take us into land court, and it's not the right thing for us to do. The approval of a construction approval, that isn't the right thing to do. What we need to do, what we need to have the planning board to do, is to take on the responsibility to outright deny because this plan is incomplete. It requires a full reapplication after the notice of intent and the orders of conditions process is completed. The clock needs to restart. There's no grandfathering here. Any new bylaw changes would apply to the new filings. The only other thing that the planning board could likely do in their deliberations after public comment would to deny the permit on substantive grounds. What I was talking about was fire safety, the lack of NFPA 855, and so on. Why would BlueWave submit an incomplete application to a small rural town without resources in Western Massachusetts? Well, why the rush? Because there's cascading costs of not obtaining the SMART grant this year. There's 20 to 50,000 in notice of intent costs and a 3 to 8 month project delay. Fortunately, the Conservation Commission demanded the notice of intent, and that will happen. 2024 Climate Act introduced a site suitability review effective March 1st, 2026, which will likely put the town out of suitability for solar. Site suitability studies and hearings cost between $50,000 and $200,000, plus $100,000 to $500,000 in mitigation costs, like stream buffers and best redesign. Requirements to offer community benefits, like a 10% revenue share after March 1st, 2026, which would cost them a lot of money. Unapproved smart projects miss the 2025 capacity blocks, which is 4% a year or $50,000 to $100,000 annually. Several Massachusetts House bills are citing solar outside residential areas and conservation land. The one big beautiful bill accelerated clean energy incentive phase-outs. Tax credits are reduced if construction doesn't happen by July 4th, 2026, hence the fence. They will get limited or no tax credits. Foreign entities of concern like China, materials that we buy from China will be phased down, so cheaper products from China won't be available, and those are getting phased out over the next couple of years. And there are incentives that BlueWave would give to the private equity firm that owns them to call this project agricultural. They make a lot of money on that one. The fire department, the head of the fire department has the authority to prohibit installation or operation of an energy storage system where the installation or operation presents an imminent danger to public safety. The bylaws, I can't read my own stuff. Worthington zoning bylaw requires us to minimize burdens on town services. 527 SMR 1 fire chief has independent powers over BESS greater than 600 kilowatt hours. Sorry. Worthington has no paid mutual aid for BESS fires, which would be fires in the battery housing. Municipalities may deny site approval for large-scale BESS where the local fire department lacks the capacity to respond and no mitigation plan has been provided. I would remind you, we're 45 minutes away from state aid if there were a fire in that BESS site. 45 minutes for a fire that with conditions, racing conditions, could envelop miles of the town in short order. Of course, that would require high winds and droughts, but we've noticed higher winds and more drought conditions as the years go by, and this will be on site for 20 years with 2 leases, extensions for 12 years and 12 years thereafter. Mutual aid out of Northampton would take about 32 minutes to come to the aid of our 8 volunteer firemen, some of whom are a little on the older side, like me. We have a small volunteer fire department handling a lithium battery fire because I'm going to assume it's a lithium battery since 90% of all the batteries are lithium. And so a fire, they happen. And when they do happen, as we've heard from the fire chiefs in California, they've asked the governor of California to not allow any more BESS installations because it puts at risk the fire, the health and safety of their volunteer fire departments. So those are the things that I thought were really important for us to consider as a town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen, for doing all that work. I hope you will share your information with us. It's a lot of information to unpack. I don't know that I can do it on the fly, and I don't know that I want to. I will say that you and I disagree on the options available to the planning board. And that's, if people want to ask questions that are more specific, it's going to be really hard for me to go, I think that was 15 minutes or 18 minutes or something, into much more detail than that. But we're here to listen, I hope you'll share the comments with us. We are, as I think I said at the beginning, we're not at the end of this process. We're in the middle of it. We're in information gathering. That is some of the information. We're also, we've hired a consultant who's with us, Beth Greenblatt, who helps us understand this project and review it. We're exploring the option of hiring environmental engineers to help us review. So I think that from my perspective, you've identified issues, and they're all, I would say all, but many of the issues are ones we're aware of, and we're in the process of looking into. So stay tuned, come back to the next meetings. Okay, anyone else? Kevin, I think you had a...
I think Helen more than covered what would have been my comments about fire safety, fire mitigation with our fire chief here. And I think she raised a lot of points that I'm not sure could be handled one by one, but we heard before from town council that there's not a big chance to fight this because solar just rules. So where are we in terms of any of the things that Helen brought up?
So, one thing that she brought up was the Conservation Commission was asked to, it's an RDA, what is it? Request determination of applicability. They were asked to decide whether the proposed fence that runs for a few hundred feet, as I recall, through a wetland, whether it was something that would be applicable, whether the Wetlands Protection Act would be applicable to that fence. And as Helen noted, that the Conservation Commission determined that it was not deemed an agricultural fence, a normal agricultural fence, and therefore the Wetlands Protection Act does apply. That's true, but there is no relationship between the actions of the Conservation Commission and the actions of the Planning Board. And so we can move forward without, in fact, we need to move forward without them making their determination. Additionally, just as a side note, it doesn't seem very hard for the applicant to simply move the fence out of the wetlands, at which point the Conservation Commission is no longer in the game, because that's their game, their focus is on wetlands. Or they can go through the NOI process and they can do a standard commercial development of a fence in the wetlands. Those options are open to them and they don't affect our process. Am I correct, Town Council? Do you want to speak to that? Oh, we lost our mic.
You're gonna have to share your mic.
Yes, the conservation process is separate from your process. Obviously, they relate because ultimately, if you have two town boards that disagree about something, you have to find a way to work that out, in fairness to everyone involved. Was there anything else?
I think it's really, are we, if the Conservation Commission made a determination.
Here, why don't you just take this, pass it around.
I think the question is, the Conservation Commission made their determination, are we, is our process stalled while we wait for them to move forward?
But in my opinion, no. There's pending application, you can hear the pending application, and if ultimately the applicant ends up in a situation where they have competing decisions, they'll have to figure out how to deal with it. That's an applicant issue, not a board issue. And if it helps, and the purpose of this process is to give you the opportunity to work through the mitigations that would possibly allow you to find that there are no significant public health, safety, or welfare concerns with this project, but that is the standard that applies to solar. It's significant public health, safety, and welfare in a way that relates to your body.
Right, so I think what she's saying is that we're, just what I'm saying, also that we're at the beginning of this process. We're trying to understand what the town is concerned about, and I hear fire is a concern. I hear pollution, water runoff is a concern. And the question is, what do we do do about it, but that question doesn't get asked until we gather all the information we can, and we're in this information gathering moment or period. So I would love to hear from the fire chief if he has concerns about fighting battery storage. I would love to hear from all sorts of people. Alan, I'm really going to ask that other people get the chance to speak first. So if there's anyone else who'd like to speak. Steve Strong?
I'd like to ask a question of the town council. When was chapter 40, section 32, chapter 48, section 3, when was that adopted?
So there's a number of different provisions in general law, chapter 48, section 3. It covers agriculture, education, solar, any number of protections. So they weren't all adopted at the same time. Different provisions have come in at different times. The solar provisions, I believe, came in the late 80s, maybe 87, 88. It was in 85, yeah, in the 1980s though. And they have been, they weren't really litigated a lot until more recent years, but they've been in there since the late 80s.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Anyone else?
Mike Don Diego, 82 Lindsay Hill Road, and I'm the Worthington Fire Chief. I'll start off by saying I support solar installations in principle. I have one of my own home, and I'm grateful for that. But I do have a number of questions with regards to this proposal. And I will admit right off the bat, I haven't had the time to dig into this in a lot of depth. I appreciate Helen and Dave's efforts there to help educate us all. The Massachusetts Comprehensive Fire Code has a fair amount to say on it. I haven't had a chance to dig into all the nitty-gritty detail, but I do have a couple of items. My first concern, this looks like a 4 megawatt DC, 2 megawatt AC installation. I haven't heard it specifically said, and I haven't had a chance to look through all the material, but I am curious of the battery type for this battery energy storage system, lithium ion versus lead acid versus any other type of battery, the charging, discharging system, and all the related items to that battery energy storage system. Containment for leaks of any of the battery materials, any fire suppression on site for the battery materials involved, the change out of batteries on some regular maintenance plan, how that's to be defined and what schedule that is, taking care of the battery materials that need to be disposed of. That's a few things in terms of the battery system. My understanding is that it will be connected to the utility grid at some point, external to the facility. There's some words in there about connecting it to the grid. I'm curious about the transmission voltages that are involved there. I'm assuming a 3-phase connection to the utility grid. I'm curious about the voltage that it would be connected to, how those lines would be routed from this facility through whatever poles and over whatever terrain to the utility. I'm concerned about storms, storm damage, bringing down those wires. I'm not sure whose responsibility that is, whether it's the power company or the facility, but we end up being the ones who respond to down wires and down poles.
So that's a significant safety concern. And it gets to the point that Helen made, things are getting drier over time. And there's a lot of dry conditions, and this is surrounded by lots of woodland. Fire department vehicle access, and the road that's proposed here, I would need to understand quite a bit more, about that, access for our vehicles. They're a lot bigger and heavier than normal maintenance or construction type vehicles. Our ladder truck is over 65,000 pounds. The engines are in the neighborhood of 35 and 40,000 pounds, so is the tanker. So I'd be concerned about making sure the roadway and the access and turnaround points, et cetera, for the vehicles is adequate, as a minimum kind of starting point. There may also be some consideration. It's difficult to get water supply in the Hilltown areas. We don't have a lot of hydrant coverage in town. We rely on local ponds and reservoirs for water supply. I haven't had a chance to think about where the nearest large pond we could draw from would be, but that involves a lot of activity in terms of tanker shuttles with mutual aid supporting towns and their tankers. I'd like it to be at least a consideration of a local water supply on the site. We've done that in the past for large residential homes. The one that comes to mind is, I can't think of the street at the moment. What was it, 10,000 square foot home residence, and we asked them and they complied to put in a fire pond on the property, so we have direct access to water right there on the site. So that is something I think that would also need some consideration. And I guess the other piece of it is, and I may have touched on this already, is just containment around the battery energy storage system, and the fire suppression system dedicated to the battery energy storage system directly. And a lot of that depends on the nature of the battery system itself. Lithium ion is a completely different chemistry and fire suppression needs than lead acid or any other type. Zinc oxide is another battery type. One of the other questions I had kind of related to that, there are other energy storage technologies being developed besides batteries. One that comes to mind is high-speed flywheels. I don't know if that's been considered here, but that has its own set of considerations. But something I think in terms of a complete plan and the nature that we understand what's happening here and how to address some of these concerns are valid at this point. I'll stop there if there's any follow-up questions.
Thank you. So I think your first set of questions are related to battery technology, and one of the reasons that we have not deemed their application complete is exactly the questions around the battery. It's going to be a tricky thing to play out because my understanding is the applicant does not want to specify exactly which battery they want to use because it's several years before they're actually going to purchase a battery. And I think the battery technology is changing pretty fast, and so it does feel unreasonable to tie them to some specific vendor at the moment. My personal goal is to work with environmental engineers to try to come up with, and the applicant to come up with sort of a rough outline of what the battery is so that we can start understanding what the implications are, because we obviously need to be able to understand the implications of the battery, whatever battery they finally choose. The second questions or set of questions you had were around the power lines and the voltages on the wires. I certainly am not able to answer that. I don't know if you guys want to speak to that one.
I can say that the interconnection is to the grid that would be upgraded to get to the site, but the voltage is the same as what the grid is, it's 23 kV. The utility would be responsible for maintaining those lines just like they do the rest of their infrastructure.
So I think that looking at the plans, there's a series of 7 telephone poles going down that short driveway, and I think that that's where the sort of interconnection happens to some degree, so that you guys must have owned that infrastructure up to some point, probably the property line-ish, or maybe not, I don't know where it is.
No, they own the first 4 or 5 poles from coming in off the street, and then it transitions to our poles.
Okay, and so my understanding is that they're likely to need to do pole upgrades and cabling upgrades from somewhere around the rotary to that point. I assume you guys have no say or knowledge of what they're proposing, but I don't know.
We have no say. We have some ability to talk about the pole lineups on our property. But as far as knowledge, we know the route and the schedule. That's about it.
So you do know the route, do you know which?
Well, I don't know it right now.
Okay. And is that something you'll know close to construction, not during permitting?
Most likely the detailed engineering starts after we pay our full amount for the interconnection. And that's next year sometime.
Okay. Now I'm gonna forget what the next set of questions were. Did that help you with who's responsible to wires, Mike?
It's a start. I think we still need some clarity on where the dividing point is, who's maintaining clearance around the clearance around the poles and the wires. 23 kV is a fairly significant voltage.
Right. And so I think I'm going to sound like a broken record, but we're in the middle of this, and so one of the things that we both ask and hope for is input from all the town departments. So I'm assuming, Mike, you will give us the list of concerns so that we can work to address and mitigate.
Yeah, I think the other one that I mentioned is vehicle access. And that
All right.
this roadway, parking, whatever situation has to accommodate multiple fire vehicles simultaneously. And the ladder truck is probably the biggest of the continuum. So it's got to be designed for at least that.
So I see the engineers are feel able to answer that, so I'll ask them.
So as the existing road is currently designed, it is designed for a WB40 vehicle. So the turnaround, entrance, exit, all of that is accommodating a WB40 sized vehicle. We are definitely open to revising that for fire safety for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what WB40 means, but
Wheelbase 40.
do you have a weight? Is that?
Not off the top of my head.
That's okay.
Like a tractor trailer truck, yeah, I can get the dimension difference between that and a ladder truck, but we can also design for the ladder if necessary.
The ladder truck, I don't remember right offhand, 65,000 pounds comes to mind, and it's got to have at least, I'll say a 35, 40 foot wheelbase to it. And it needs a lot of room to turn around.
Yeah, so if it's 35, 40, then the road as designed should accommodate that.
And the road as designed, I think, includes, from my memory of your plans, places that the trucks can basically pull into the field that are somehow reinforced to take the weight. Is that accurate?
That was just for construction phase of like unloading, but there is actually gravel access road turnarounds adjacent to both battery pads so that it is easy access to the battery systems.
Okay. I mean, Mike, I'm hoping you'll give us the specs that you need, because that's the point, is to go back to them and say, this is what we need. So, was that all of your questions? I feel like there was another group, but. Oh, I had a question for you, Mike. You talked about water supply and potentially a water, I assume a pond to help with firefighting. I think I heard Aaron say that water isn't the recommended treatment of batteries, but I don't know.
It all depends on the type of battery. Lithium ion, if that's the battery technology, is extremely difficult to extinguish, especially with water. That's things that have been finding out over the last several years with vehicle fires with lithium ion batteries. They're getting to the point where they have to bring a special container on site and basically dump the vehicle in a flooded storage container and let it just sit there. It all depends on the battery chemistry, et cetera. There are other suppressant agents depending on the technology. And I would have to do some more research there. That's not my particular forte.
Okay, that seems like, Aaron, I don't know if you want to speak to battery or?
I can. I think it's important to note that batteries are highly regulated. Our batteries will comply with NFPA 855. They will have UL 9540A listing. Those were items that were referenced that I want to just make sure I call out. Those are important because they talk about propagation testing, their UL standards that the battery manufacturers have gone through to show that their cells don't run away. The reason that we aren't comfortable giving you a data sheet today is because the industry has turned over so much recently. We genuinely don't know what battery we would be using in next year. And so what we have done for other projects is, one, we absolutely want to work with the fire department and provide training and meet all their needs. And those types of things could be a condition of the permit, that we have to do that and have to get their sign off prior to being able to be issued a building permit.
I guess I'll just mention, because you mentioned this idea of a condition that town council told us that the site plan review, you can't deny, or it's very hard to deny, but you can approve with conditions, or the planning board can approve with conditions. And so that is sort of where, that's the mechanism we have to mitigate concerns, is to approve the site plan review, but attach conditions that address the concerns. So what Aaron was just saying is that one of the conditions could be that the applicant must work with the fire department to train or whatever. Mike also mentioned the idea of putting one of the conditions being that the applicant installs a fire pond. That is our tool to mitigate concerns. And so what we're doing starting tonight is trying to understand the concerns, and then hopefully we'll be able to find ways to mitigate many of them. But it's definitely a collaborative process between the folks with the concerns and us and the planning board, and the applicant. All right, Mr. LaGoy, next 2 doors down.
Good evening, everyone. Matt LaGoy, 140 Buffington Hill. I'm probably one of the most impacted by this proposal, and I've also spent 25 years in the utility industry, building this type of infrastructure. First little item I'll just hit you with is we have some setback requirements in our zoning bylaws. The fence that's proposed is an integral part of this design, and it needs to start at the 50-foot setback, which is called out in our bylaws. Currently, that design has got it basically up on the property line. That fence exists because this solar field exists. Conservation Commission saw it that way, and anybody who looks at it knows it's only there for one reason. So, first and foremost, from a fire perspective, I'm the guy that, that would meet you at the gate when, the substation burned. So what I can tell you, currently, in the world of solar and battery, backup, when those batteries go off, it becomes a containment job. You're not dumping water on those batteries. All you're doing is make sure it doesn't spread. EPA put out new guidelines about a month ago, just general recommendations for fire crews. 100% supplied air, because the toxins coming off that fire. If you're not 100% supplied air, we're going to a 3-room. Downstream, it's evacuation. You evacuate everybody downstream, you know. It's things that you need to consider. The lithium-ion battery was going to show up in one form or another, but it'll be a lithium-ion base. It'll have a new acronym with it, because it's 2 years out, but that's okay, so it goes. But I just want to make sure that and I know I'm trying to work with the tools we have, and we don't have many, okay? And, you know, I will remind everybody here that if you sign up for a program that was put together by politicians and the word smart is in it, you better check your bank account. It's going to cost a lot of money. And that's what this is. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for a minute in the room and just answer 2 quick questions from the chat. Stephen Lipsitz asks, how does the town of Worthington benefit from the solar installation? And I think I'm going to refer to BlueWave for that.
You tell us. One of the things that's common with solar projects is to enter into a pilot, PILOT, payment in lieu of taxes, and it's a program where we agree on a rate that the project pays the town every year for the life of the system. It provides stable, not decreasing, because of depreciation revenue. That's the main line.
So payment in lieu of taxes is exactly what it sounds like. It's a payment instead of paying taxes. It is my understanding that it is also possible for the municipality, or it's an either or, but for the municipality to simply tax the asset as personal property tax. I think that there are pluses and minuses for both. My understanding is that most solar companies are interested in pilot agreements. I think also most town councils are interested, town as in lawyers, are more interested in pilot agreements. I think there's a notion that they protect the town in the long run more than the relying on personal property tax. But that is, so first, the planning board does not negotiate the pilot agreement. That's something for a select board. And my understanding is the select board is looking into it, and the assessors are definitely involved in that conversation. But it is the case that there is some sort of tax revenue associated with a solar project. I think that the other, well, no, I'm skipping. So the second question was, will BlueWave repair any damage done by the construction vehicles to local public roads? And this is I think a good question. I think that we have not spoken with the highway department yet. I do have at least a passing sense of the volume of construction vehicles, and it seemed not insignificant, but maybe I can ask BlueWave to both speak to what their liability is for damage, and also what sort of volume are we talking about?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer that, but one thing that is standard is we could fund an account that has a certain amount of money for roadway maintenance before the project, and that could get used to offset issues that arise. It's a little hard to prove what is from what, but those funds could be used for general road maintenance.
I think it is Well, it's a concern that I have been aware of, that this is a fairly large project, and I can't remember now, and I don't know if you guys remember, I did ask you sort of volume of trucks and weights. Do you remember what that was?
Not off the top of my head, but it's in the response to comments letter that we submitted, yep.
Yeah, it's not insignificant, and it definitely felt like we need to talk to the highway department about that. Ridge Road is not it's not 112. So again, we're in this process, but that is something that we're looking at. So I think in the back.
Yeah, well, I have that answer.
Okay,
So if I could just read it, what we wrote was during construction, the heaviest truck to enter the site were typically the WB-40s that were just referenced. Those have a maximum weight of 80,000 pounds. They're used to deliver equipment 20 to 30 times, and that's spaced out over the course of several weeks. And then other than that, the majority of the workers and the effort is smaller trucks, standard pickup size vans and things like that. So really, I'm sure that there will be a lot of activity with the smaller trucks, but as far as the big trucks go, those bigger deliveries, several dozen.
A few dozen semi-loads. And then the other piece of that response was ongoing site visits, traffic.
Ongoing after commissioning is very minimal. We would have biannual, quarterly O&M, operations maintenance visits to look at the electrical infrastructure and the storm features, but it's fairly minimal.
And that's not a big truck, that's
the van, really. Yeah, work done.
Okay. Yes.
Jim Downey, Covington Road. So, Clark, this question, you mentioned.
Oh, we need a mic for you. What happened to the mic? It's right.
You mentioned that you've already retained an engineer, which you're entitled to do. So she's working for the town. You mentioned the Ms. Greenblatt.
So Ms. Greenblatt is not an engineer. She's not doing a technical review. She's helping us more with I always have trouble with the non-technical aspects of this. She has a lot of experience with utilities and with solar projects, and our goal is to have her help guide us through this process of developing conditions, understanding the application, understanding what we don't understand.
That sounds good, but I think what's clear, Bart, is there's many unanswered questions that require professionals. These people are required to reimburse the town for the town's retention of an engineer, a licensed engineer.
So we have not retained an engineer, but we're in the process.
Okay, so that will be done. We will have a licensed engineer that will be advising the town that will not have any relationship with the applicant. Correct.
Yes, that is my expectation.
Okay, and then to John's point, we also have the right to request that up to 125% of the cost of the removal of all of these solar arrays can be banked by the town of Worthington and held in perpetuity or for the duration of the lease in the event this whole thing goes south. So that is going to be done as well?
Yes, that's a condition in our bylaw, and that is definitely something that we're relying on both Beth Greenblatt and town council to make sure we do it right. I think there are several options for how that money is held. I'm sure we'll talk to the finance committee about how they'd like it, but yes, the point is to do our very best to figure out how to cover the costs of, there's several concerns there. One is BlueWave does this, installs it, and becomes insolvent and walks away. And then what happens to that asset that's now?
Or they're sold to an offshore company, and Worthington is not going to sue in Shanghai.
Exactly. So there are a number of ways that it could go south, and the goal is to protect ourselves from that. But there's also just, they run it out for its 20 years, and we're done, and they leave, and that's a decommissioning cost too. So there's the sort of unplanned issues, but there's also just comes to the end of term, and what happens next, so.
But we do have, under the enabling legislation or the bylaws, we do have the right to protect ourselves.
Yes.
So we should
And
request
we feel it's important to do that.
and retain the outside consultant.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. And right in the front.
Brian Scheck, Buffington Hill Road. My concern with this project is one of aesthetics. We live, or we're fortunate enough to live, in a very attractive, small New England town. When I drive down Ridge Road today, there's one of the prettiest golf courses in the state on one side, and on the other side is a field that has been hayed every summer as long as I've lived in town, at least as long as I can remember, for about 40 years, probably way before that. And I have nothing against solar. However, I do think solar farms are extremely ugly. And I don't want to look at a solar farm. My wife and I have a cottage up in Vermont, in the Middlebury area. And in the 30-mile stretch of Route 7 between Middlebury and Shelburne, at least a dozen nice farm fields have been ruined by putting solar arrays in them. There aren't cows grazing out in the field anymore. People aren't baling hay. They aren't chopping corn for silage. Is all you look at. As far as what I consider landscape pollution. Because you look at those fields and think what they were, and you see what they are today. And I just can't believe that the people in the town of Worthington want to have that in the center of town. And I refer to that as the center of town because right where we're sitting, which is Worthington Center, is only about a quarter of a mile away. If you go in the other direction from the proposed site, go down Buffington Hill Road, you're in Worthington Four Corners. So as far as I'm concerned, that Ridge Road area is part of the center of town of Worthington. And I just cannot believe that the people in town want to have a solar array in the center of the town. So I guess since we're supposed to ask a question,
Or comment.
my question is, if this thing becomes reality, which I definitely hope it doesn't, I want to know what is going to be done to put some kind of a barrier, whether it's evergreen trees or stockade fence. I want something put up around the perimeter of the property of both Ridge Road and Buffington Hill going into Lindsay Hill Road, so that I don't have to see the thing when I'm driving on our town roads. So what's going to be done from a landscaping point of view to allow me not to have to view it?
I think that aesthetic concern is shared by many, and I think that it is certainly something the planning board is aware of and really wondering how to mitigate it. I'm gonna go to Nestor.
Hi, Nestor Matthews, Planning Board. Certainly aesthetics are a big concern for the town in general and for the planning board. It's important to remember that Massachusetts has deemed solar panels arrays to be important for climate change and for the future. And so we unfortunately as a town have to accept that they are going to exist in town. And these we cannot work against Massachusetts law. They are by right, and we have to figure out how they can be incorporated into the town in a way that is acceptable to as many people as possible. It's not, I do not want to see a solar farm there either, but I think it is in the best interest of the town to figure out ways to mitigate it so that it will be acceptable, because we have a certain responsibility to pass this with conditions.
No, we don't.
We do. And the other thing I just wanted to say quickly, sorry, the question about how to mask this array is something that we want to look at in our list of conditions. We don't know what that is yet, but something we want to investigate.
I think right behind was next, right behind Brian.
Okay, I'm gonna stand up just because it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. My name's Emily. I live at 138 Whit Hill Road, and I just want to start by saying there is no place I would there's no place that I would, anyway, I really don't want to be here tonight. This is like my worst case scenario as far as a place that I'm gonna be. I worked at, as some of you know, I worked at the National Renewable Energy Lab for most of my career, and never in my life did I think I would be going up against a solar project or be opposed to it. I really, really love this town so much. I have 2 toddlers. I feel incredibly lucky to live here. I brag about it all the time to my friends all over the US. I appreciate the planning board's time and effort and all this. I've put a lot of time to researching this. I also had the opportunity to read through the over 400 page proposal provided. And just for clarity, there were a number of things that were concerning to me in regards to statement by the engineers and also the company. And I just want to read some parts of the proposal. That way you guys can make your own opinion on them, because I figure most people have not had access to them. Just to start, the engineers said that the array will be connected through a series of inverters, switchboards, and transformers. They did not state how many. And then they said, based on previous project experience, but did not state what project experience that was, or if it was in an agricultural zone or not. The noise from the facility is not anticipated to be audible at the surrounding property lines. Typical transformers and inverters installations provide a low hum of approximately 50 decibels. And then they compare that to a ceiling fan. So I think I'll let you make your own opinion on that. There's no audible analysis of that to verify it, or like I said, how many inverters, switchboards, or transformers. There's a number of times where they provide certainties with failure to cite evidence. They fail to mention the aquifer protection zone in places it would be applicable. Also, that hasn't been addressed, an underground distribution line underneath the perimeter fence. The applicant, it also says here, the applicant is committed to comply with local federal regulations, and the project will have no negative economic effects on adjoining properties, nor will it result in destructive noise, odors, fumes, or vibration on adjoining properties. And then it says the project is generally compatible with adjacent and other properties in the district. The project will not impact and then it goes to talk about education. Let's see, what else do I have here? It also says the architectural design, scale, layout, and landscaping of the proposed development is in harmony with the historic and rural character of the neighborhood and town of Worthington. Let me see, what else do we have here? And I'm sorry, my printer is down, or else this would probably be a lot more organized. Let's see, what else do I have here? Let's go on to the next page. In my research, I've also found that BlueWave was indeed created in, I think it said 2010, but if you follow the path, they have changed their names 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. All LLCs, one public benefit corporation, and then it leads back to a Canadian, I think, private equity firm called Axiom Infrastructure, which I thought was interesting. I don't know why a company would change their name so many times. I am also concerned about the fact that they have created an LLC, but then say they are planning on retaining this project. If you're retaining a project, why would you create an LLC? And they could answer. And you're not willing to, or you're not looking to sell it. I don't know why you would create an LLC other than to protect yourself and your company. I think I also want to get into the liability insurance, which Helen touched on. The liability insurance that they provided was not even a full representation of the liability insurance that they hold. So you can't see what it does cover and it doesn't cover. I feel it's a safe assumption that this liability insurance does not cover any sort of fire. Also, this is predatory, in my opinion, to the landowners and the people leasing. I believe that this will negate their homeowners insurance and they will not be able to sell their home, well, or they wouldn't be able to, no one would be able to get a loan on it. So yeah, they also were not named in the insurance provided by BlueWave, which was pretty suspect to me since they're the landowners. It was also incredibly underfunded. I think it was 3 million. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. That is extraordinarily inadequate. Not to mention, if there was an environmental disaster caused by a BES, or if there was some sort of pollutant left from the solar panels, which was omitted from the whole entire proposal. We don't know what kind of solar panels it is. If there was an environmental disaster, you guys probably have heard of the train derailing in Ohio. Nobody's going to want to move to this town. So I think they should be required to cover the property or the cost of all our property, to be quite honest, because they're putting us all at risk. I also don't know how the board could make a determination on the safety, safety, welfare and health without having these extraordinarily large components set in stone. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's a well representation of the needs of this community and what this community wants. And let's see, what else do I have here? Also, the homeowners are named in the proposal. And I would, like I said, I would implore you to go ahead and read the whole entire proposal yourself. They are named as responsible for the maintenance of this site. And I think that is completely unfair to put on, they're actually named first under the maintenance. It's completely unfair to put on an aging couple. Quite honestly, if this was my parents that were in this situation and I read this, I would be horrified. That's just, I really do not want to say that, but it's true. I think there's plenty of examples where BES systems have created environmental disasters. It's a quick Google away. I don't think anyone could deny that. I don't know how. I have looked at all the legal precedents too, also, so I see and understand why the board would feel they're up against a hard place, a rock and a hard place. So yeah, also, the issue with the lack of insurance is that the town would be liable for all contamination that happens along with the homeowners. So everyone, in the case of a disaster, you know, our community, everyone would be able to essentially sue the homeowner. I believe. Let's see. Like I said, I don't think a determination should be made on the health, safety, and welfare of an incomplete proposal. I think everyone here would agree with me. It actually feels like a threat to the public safety, health and welfare of this community. I'm sure there's a million other things that I could mention. Like I said, this proposal was hefty. It was really felt like an insult to the intelligence of this community. And yeah, I think that our town shouldn't make a determination on this without getting independent lawyers and engineers because of a conflict of interest between the engineers and BlueWave. And yeah, I think that's all I have for now. Like I said, I could probably stand up here and like actually get to the nitty gritty of, you know, how this is dangerous for our town, but I don't think that would be a good use of my time. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. I think a couple things that stand out. One is noise, and that is something that we are looking at. That's one of the reasons to get independent environmental engineering review. It's also the batteries are the real complexity. Do they have an HVAC system in them or not? We don't know, and so there needs to be. We need some way that we can understand the battery system more completely, which is where we are. That's why we're asking. So, thank you. I guess the other big one was insurance, and that's something we'll definitely look at. I don't know if you guys want to speak to corporate structure. I think that was the other big avenue there.
Yeah, I could. I think that the general question was, why would we start an LLC? If we're the owners, why would we need to do that? And it is a unfortunate circumstance that because of the challenge of financing and the structure of the federal tax credit in this country.
Our tax dollars, the tax credit from us.
Yes, yeah. Because of that program, the standard way to start a solar development is to have it as a separate entity. That's just a standard approach. Then you can bring in financing to that entity and tax equity into that entity, and we still retain ownership, the majority ownership. I hope that helps.
Okay. Behind you, Gabriel, next to Mike. Can't quite see someone.
Hi. Annie LaVoy, I'm at 140 Buckingham Hill Road. I had some questions. I'm sorry. One of the things, the big things you're talking about for not having this proposal go through was the health and safety and welfare of the town. Why is the Board of Health not part of this? Are we going to hear from them? Concerns being the water. I know we saw the circle of the town water, but there are other people in the town, a lot of people that don't belong to the town well. Our well is probably less than 50 feet from our property, and so we're 50, 100 feet maybe. It's a shallow well, it's probably 30 feet. I'm sure there's water in that hill. There's water everywhere, Buckingham Hill, all up and down the hill, Ridge Road. There are wells. There are old wells from years past across the street from us. We have a town well that is dry stacked, and it's probably 20 feet. And about 20 feet deep. It's maybe 5 feet from the road. I bet you didn't know that, did you? It has a big stone on it. The town crew, road crew has knocked it off before. They don't know it's there. I tried to tell people that it's there. So that used to be a well for the community. Our neighbor below us actually has rights to that well. These are safety concerns that haven't been addressed. The view shed from our property, I want to know if anyone has looked from our house in the field towards the west tree line. So that's the view shed that we need to talk about that's going to be seen. It's going to be seen even with an 8-foot fence with a grade of 50 feet up the hill. Trying to mitigate that is going to be impossible. So they quoted us, in general, the surrounding properties are valued maybe decreased by 1.5%. That's a few $1,000s. That is not going to cut it. So does the town have any mitigation? Have they talked about any kind of mitigation that they're going to do with property owners whose property values have been devastated completely? There's such a word as inverse condemnation. It's kind of like eminent domain, but in reverse. So the public, state, town puts in something that benefits everybody else, but our property is completely negated, and so we are entitled to compensation for that. And you better believe that we are gonna get it, because we are gonna sue. And we should. I had some concerns, other concerns, one of them being the noise that we're talking about. So I had asked in the initial meeting that we had several weeks ago in the back room about the noise level. I was told by the Zenas when I was at a meeting at their property at the barn that it was going to be quiet, you would never hear anything. These people here are putting in solar fields, and they don't know how loud they're going to be. They can't say what the decibel noise would be. This is a huge field. This is not a little one. The one in Windsor that people have seen is not very big compared to this. This is 27 acres. This is huge. It will make noise. They should know what that is. They should have that information. I feel sometimes they're being disingenuous. They're not answering questions. They're skirting things. Another question that I had, or a comment, so it said that the battery was mandated by the state, and I want to know if that's correct, or is it disincentivized? Do we need to have a battery system? They make a lot of money. We take all the risk. The other thing that I got from today's meeting, I want to know how they define active farming. What's the criteria for that? When do you kick the casinos off their property saying they're not doing enough? I'd like an answer to that one.
Yeah.
And I seriously want the planning board and other town boards to come to our backyard and see the view shed that's most affected here. And I appreciate you getting to me finally, because I am on a butter. Thank you.
Thank you. You raised a bunch of points, and I'm best to remember them. Let's see, we, in the questions that we just submitted to BlueWave, we asked about a balloon test, which is exactly what you're talking about, going out and looking and seeing, putting a balloon at the height of the, max height of the panels, or, you know, in their highest orientation, various places, trying to figure out what we see. I agree with you, it's important. I think we've touched on noise. Why is the Board of Health not part of this? I can't speak to their role. I have spoken with Diane Brenner. She does know, or the Board of Health in general has a copy of the special permit application. It is my sense, I mean, so I keep saying we're in the process of retaining an environmental engineer. One of the things that we want to know is, how does the water move in this land? We're not qualified to speak to how water moves on that property, both above and below. And that's really trying to get at what is the risk? Where are there wells, and what are the risks? We don't know. But it is definitely something we're interested in. And I think that's a place where the Board of Health certainly could give us guidance. As I say, I'm not on the Board of Health. I don't know what their charge is. Let's see. Is the battery mandated? I believe it is mandated. There's a scale question. I don't know the. How do I say this? I believe that a battery is required. I think that the battery that they are suggesting is larger than is required, but I am not sure of that.
Do they get money for the size?
I think, and maybe I should ask the applicant, but my understanding is that the advantage of having a battery, so I think we all are aware that solar only produces power during the day when the sun is shining. It's always been one of the problems with solar energy, is that it's only during the day. So if you want power at night to run the lights, you have to get it from some other source. The point of the battery storage is to try to start addressing that. So I think that the rates that they are paid are higher at night. And so that if they store some of the battery they generate during the day and release it at night, there is a higher payment, I believe, but they're the ones who know this business. So.
Not exactly, but it's close. It's fair. It charges during the day, it discharges at night. It's not a higher rate then, but it does allow us to participate in some programs that are demand response type. So there's a reason for it other than just the charge and discharge.
Yeah.
I can talk to the active farmer.
Oh, great. Yeah, nice.
The question was, would we take the Cenas off the farm? The answer is no.
Could you?
Could
You have a
we?
legal right to?
If they stop farming and we need to have a farmer farm it, we could get someone to hay it,
Who makes
yes.
that decision that they stop farming?
I'm sorry, can we actually, feel free to answer the question.
The question is, who makes a decision? The way that it would work is, we have to report every year production, and we will be going to the Cenas to ask for that information. If they aren't able to give us it, and we would have a conversation. I can't really imagine the scenario, to be honest, but we would have a conversation about what was going on, see if we could come up to a solution. And I think that, I don't see a scenario where they aren't farming, so it's not a real question in my mind.
Can I ask you? So can I speak to this a little bit? There's a whole process that I am not super familiar with, and maybe you guys are more familiar with, that I believe BlueWave has already gone through. Involves a series of applications to DOER and UMass, what is the CEC, to develop a plan for the agrivoltaics portion. We have not seen that application or that plan. It is something we've requested yesterday, so I don't blame them for not getting it to us. I wouldn't have read it anyway. So it is not BlueWave who writes those rules. They were developed by MDAR, the Mass Department of Ag Resources. And it remains to be, like, we haven't seen it. So at a future hearing, we'll be able to speak more to it. I think my question for you is, the Cenas, I believe, live on the property, and I believe they will expect to continue living on the property. They also are currently farming the property. You need, in order to meet the specs of the DOER's program, you need to have that that land actively farmed. If a time came that the Cenas were no longer actively farming it, whatever that definition is, it's not that, I could ask the question directly, would you in some way remove them from the property? Like, they live there, right? So,
no, in the beginning, I think I mentioned this, there are two documents. One is the lease where they give us the right to do this project, and the second is the farming contract. The first option is that they would find someone to farm that they want and take over. That would be our ideal setup. We don't want to be the ones dictating that. We would just step in if it were required and find someone.
Right. Thank you. I think that's gets at the crux of it. All right, who's next? Gabriel.
I found it troubling that understanding that obviously there's a ton of concern in this town with the project, that our town council basically introduced herself and explained that there was absolutely not really any way to stop this project. And I get you were educating us on what zoning by right means, and that we can work on mitigating, educating ourselves, and working on some stipulations we give them, but essentially, this is gonna happen. I think that's disingenuous. There are plenty of instances where this has not happened because BlueWave has companies like BlueWave have just backed off. They have taken their project somewhere else. It has been too much work, or too much bureaucracy for them to go through, or too much resistance. That's why the statistics are 90-0. So I have a suggestion that BlueWave really consider, after being here tonight and seeing this town, and really understand that Worthington is not like some of the other towns you've been able to steamroll through, and that this will not be a pleasant process. It will be arduous. I know you're trying to do your job. I know you're just doing your job. I really suggest you consider, and God bless the other towns, but I have to just worry about the town I'm in right now. I think you can have more success doing projects in other towns than Worthington. Thank you.
Thank you. A question from online. Let me see if I can. Okay, so there are questions about tax. Basically, we've talked about hiring Beth Greenblatt as a consultant. We're talking about hiring an engineer as a consultant. This is the question is, I think, about who's paying for that. And there's a provision, I just think of it as 53G, but I'm sure that's the section, not the chapter, which allows planning boards and some other boards to hire consultants but the applicants pay. So we control the hiring, they write a check. And so there is no taxpayer funds going towards these consultants. It's the applicant's money, but they're working for us. So that's what we're doing.
It's 8.5G.
Thank you. Well, so that's the in our bylaw, that enables us to do it, but it's 53G in Mass General Law. Okay, who's next? Yes. Go ahead.
So I just had two quick questions. If there's the hiring of the consultants be paid for by the vendors, something that goes into the conditions for the permit? Who controls that arrangement?
It's not a condition of the permit, no.
Oh, sorry. So just to clarify, there's a provision in the Massachusetts general laws that allows boards to hire consultants during the planning process to advise them about risks, harms, damages, mitigations, all of those things. So that work's done before any decision would issue. So it wouldn't actually be a condition in the decision, it's a part of the process.
So first, I failed to introduce myself. I'm Dick Wagner with Oak Road.
Nice
But
to meet you.
the question, that with a better understanding is that who would be doing the hiring? Is it the planning board?
The planning board.
Okay, so would the planning board be reimbursed for those expenses under this type of agreement if in fact the project did not go forward?
We actually get the funds in advance.
Yes.
You have to get the funds in advance. My other question, just a quick question for them, is where is the LLC incorporated?
Good answer.
I believe it's Delaware.
Okay. So I will speak to the select board about the problems of going after companies that are incorporated in Delaware at another time. Thanks.
Yes, Steve.
Forgive me. I still don't understand why this meeting is held under the authority of the zoning bylaws. Why that authority supersedes the authority given to the planning board by the general bylaws, particularly the Scenic Roads Act, which does address scenic and aesthetic issues as a criteria for any work done in the vicinity of a scenic road, which Ridge Road is. Why does one authority supersede the other authority?
So one authority does not necessarily supersede the other authority, just like if this application needs both planning board approval under zoning, which it does, and a conservation approval, the applicant has to go to both. If they need an approval under the town scenic road bylaw under the statute, they'll have to apply for that as well. So I haven't looked at that, I can't say if they do or they don't, but they need to get all of the approvals that they need for the project. And the scenic road review is a very limited process, but if there's a question about that, and the town asks us to, we can look at it, but one doesn't supersede the other. They have to get each and every approval that they would need.
And so I would add to that, at least in my understanding is that this scenic road bylaw really only applies to things that are happening to the stone walls and the trees in the right of way.
Yes.
And this proposal is using an existing road, driveway. I don't believe it's touching stone walls. I'm not even sure there's a stone wall in that vicinity. And there is. Okay. And there's no tree cutting, I believe, in the proposal.
May I have a follow-up to that statement, please?
The Scenic Roads Act in the general bylaws is section 12. Section 12 has a number of paragraphs in it. You're referring to the purpose paragraph, which is the first paragraph. But paragraph 8, which deals with criteria, states, the planning board's decision on any application or action affecting scenic roads shall be based on the following considerations. 1, environmental values. 2, scenic and aesthetic characteristics. 3, historic values. 4, public safety. 5, compensatory actions such as replacement of trees and stone walls. 6, other sound planning considerations. Response, please.
So, again, so it's something that we can look at in more detail. I can tell you, generally speaking, under state law, and most of the bylaws that were adopted for scenic roads under the state law, the trigger for applying at all is that you're removing trees or that you're doing something with the walls. It is not a general protection from use of scenic roads. So that's something I can take a look at. I don't wanna have you all sit here and watch me read the general bylaw, think about it now, but something that I'm happy to take a look at. But I can tell you generally, the term that is a scenic road bylaw can be misleading sometimes. It really relates to tree removal and wall removal and disturbance related to construction activities in scenic roads. And it is generally limited. I'm happy to take a look at you know, if it seems like another application is necessary, then I'm sure that's something that can be discussed with the applicant.
All right, anyone else? Anyone else? Ellen?
Thank you. With all due respect to the town council, the last time that I had a skirmish with the town, that they relied on town council, I went before the Massachusetts Division of Occupational Licensure and the Office of Public Safety and Inspections, the Architectural Access Board, and I got a finding. What came out of that was all the research that I did was 100% right, surprisingly, and that the town council had given incorrect information to the town. My husband and I were out $500,000 in hard costs and about $2 million in damages. We didn't sue the town because I've been here since I was 6 years old in 1967, and I really love this town. So when we heard earlier that the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board were two separate paths here, that's not true. Our bylaws have a review procedure. The site plan review authority, which is the Planning Board, has to talk to other town boards, specifically the fire chief, the police chief, the Conservation Commission, the Board of Health, the building inspector, the highway superintendent, the select board, the zoning board of appeals. They're supposed to be getting conditions from all of those boards and acting upon them. When the Conservation Commission on Monday said that the RDA wasn't enough and they needed a notice of intent, they couldn't get the order of conditions out of that process, and that's been put on hold until that notice of intent is filed. Therefore, the planning board really can't move forward with this. And I just wanted to remind you of that. There are a couple other things that I'd like to talk about. We heard earlier from the chair, Bart, that the plans could just move the fence out of the wetlands. But the Conservation Commission addressed that, if not directly, indirectly on Monday night. The state is very clear. The Wetlands Protection Act says that you have to look at an entire project, so that moving the fence is not enough. An NOI is required, and the Conservation Commission noted that and acted on that and gave their assessment. So moving the fence is not enough. You have to take a look at the entire battery system, which is what's at stake here and at a problem here. Tonight, I gave you a list of all of the things, all of the plans that were missing from the application. I'm happy to share them again, but over and over again, the BlueWave representatives were asked by towns members or the planning board for a piece of information, they didn't have the plan. There were no plans. They didn't have the information in front of them. They weren't articulated. Those aren't plans. I'm sorry. I'm a former manager of technology on large projects with hundreds of engineers. I know what a plan looks like. We did not get one. On fire and safety, I just want to remind people that the batteries here, the lithium batteries, again, over 90% of all batteries are lithium, one way or another. As Matt said, potentially just change the name. But they burn at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and they cannot be taken, they cannot be brought down by water. We sit there and we allow those battery fires to burn out, or we use forever chemicals to put them out that will leach into the public waterways. We didn't mention the potable water in Worthington. I believe the state of Massachusetts, and I need to find this out definitively, but I believe the state of Massachusetts has 11 miles of potable drinking water. Half of that is in Worthington. That's at risk. That's a serious risk here. The planning board has a responsibility to protect the rural character of the town, the aesthetic qualities, the historical nature of the town. I understand that there's a by right use here. Again, I was on the planning board when we revamped the site plan review in 2010. But what the planning board also has in front of them is a requirement to minimize disproportionate burden on town services. You cannot do that. You do not have the authority. There is nothing here that will ever mitigate what would happen to the town if there were a battery fire here. We are too far removed from any services that could save us. There would be disaster here. There is nothing that you can do to mitigate this. As I said earlier tonight, your action here is to deny this application. They are missing all of the information that we would need as a town to take a look at and to review and comment on. You perhaps would like to confer with your attorney on this one, but I will tell you, there are the entire town of Worthington, minus a handful, would join us in a lawsuit against this process. I am repeating, you have to deny this because the plan is incomplete, and that is within your purview, that is within your right, and that is what your townspeople are asking you to do tonight.
Unfortunately, I disagree. I do believe the plan is incomplete, which is why we've asked the applicant to give us more information. And until they're non-responsive, that process can continue. So it isn't complete, but the goal is to end up with one that is.
You should be able to talk to your town council about what we're talking about tonight before you vote, but you should vote.
I'm sorry, what do you want to vote on? I'm hearing just people calling out the vote. I'm not sure what.
Who are you calling?
Well, I'm anyone who's, but okay, please.
Okay, so my name's Julie. I am a resident here on Plum River Road, and I have been following this since I heard about it just 2 weeks ago, barely 2 weeks ago, on the within Worthington Facebook page, and then the Worthington website of the Worthington Facebook page. I know that a lot of people hadn't heard about it until it was, on that page, when we talked about it in person. I am going to,
repeat some of the things that a lot of our people here have already said. I'm going to try to do it as quickly, but in the effort to demonstrate that this is a big problem, that this is not something that can just be, shown as being like, well, it's out of our hands and we can do nothing about it, because we can. There have been large companies that have pulled out of these projects that they've been trying to push into towns. Westfield, Jupiter Power, they wanted to put a large BESS facility there. The town bought it and Jupiter pulled out. Okay, Greenfield is fighting this. Northfield, Cambridgeville is fighting it. Pittsfield is fighting it. There are hill towns all over this area fighting this because of safety concerns, because of concerns to waterways, because of concerns to farmland and how that impacts people's livelihood when there is, or the potential for something catastrophic like a fire that is created by something so toxic as a giant battery, okay? Many people have already said that we are so far removed from services. We have an 8-person volunteer fire department, okay? The Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, okay? You want to hear what they list as some of the toxic contents of smoke? And this is just for people. This isn't talking about the environmental hazard. This isn't talking about the wildlife impact. This isn't talking about the waterway impact or the long-term results of something like this, okay? Hydrogen fluoride, highly toxic and corrosive. And I might just add, the batteries in BESS facilities are of the largest size and the risks are at the outer edge of the extremes. In BESS fires, the toxic substances and their consequences of concern for local boards of health are the following. Hydrogen fluoride, highly toxic and corrosive, can cause severe respiratory irritation, pulmonary edema, and long-term lung damage. Okay, you have an aging population here. We have limited medical resources available here, okay? Carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless, deadly gas. Okay, Moss Fire Landing that happened earlier this year, thousands of people were evacuated from their homes, thousands. Carbon dioxide, they interfere with oxygen transport in the blood. How many people here in this community might need oxygen? That's going to affect that, right? Less toxic, but can displace oxygen and worsen smoke inhalation. So if you have a fire, a wildfire in an area that is experiencing increasing drought, increasing rates of wind speed, okay, you have a low access to water to even fight wildfires, let alone forget about fighting a BESS fire or lithium-ion battery fire with water, right? We all know that's not the tactic, okay? But you're trying to control the fire at that point. You have people who have to leave their homes, leave their livestock, leave their farmland to just sit there and collect dust, okay, collect smoke, collect ash in the waterways that is toxic. It is proven to be toxic. Okay, people have lived their whole lives here who have invested in living here, okay? And I don't even need to go on, but this is on the website, and I'm happy to continue. Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, okay? So it's on the website, it's on the internet, you can look at this. The other thing is, I originally came from California. I moved here because my husband lives here, my in-laws are here, we came here to be close to them. And I have seen the damages to wildfire. And I'm not saying this to scare people, but I'm saying this because this is the reality of climate change. When there are increased droughts, there are increased fires, okay? There were 23,000 acres that burned at one fire in January, earlier this year, okay? 23,000 acres, it burned for a month. You're talking about lithium-ion battery fires that they continue to flare up. What are you gonna have, 8 volunteer firefighters who do they even have coverage from the town for medical needs? PPE? Any kind of coverage like that, and they're supposed to sit there and watch a fire continuously, maybe turn off, maybe not turn off? Who's gonna pay for all of the firefighting that need to come into Worthington to help us fight something like this? Just recently, Amherst, there was a fire over there, a whole building caught on fire and it burned down. How many firefighters were sent there? 4 firefighters from Amherst. It's not a simple thing that just goes away. You want to have a 20-year project here. You want to talk about in 12 months, if the solar panels are not working within 12 months, or they haven't been working for 12 months, it's decommissioned. Then it goes into decommissioning. So what? What happens then? Who's responsible for that? Is it a brownfield if there's been a fire? What happens to all the land around it? What happens to the waterway, the aquifer? Everything that is around that fire is affected, and it's not short-term solutions that are going to clean it up. It is a long
long-term, long-haul environmental impact in an area this rural, this removed from resources, and that frankly just is not, like many people have said, this isn't the place for it. This isn't the place. There are site suitability reports that are out right now that talk about how this land, 190 Ridge Road, is at the low, it's marked C for like electrical abilities to do something like this. Meaning you have to put so much effort and work into bringing it here. It's just crazy, and I'm repeating what a lot of people have said, but it's important. It's really important. This is a health concern in a small town. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there a hand in the back?
Hi, my name is Chris Lambie. I live in West Chesterfield. I'm a neighbor. I'm also a documentary filmmaker, and from Alaska to Appalachia, I've documented stories like this where ventures backed by private equity come into small towns and run roughshod over them. And where I've interviewed Alaska Native people on the Yukon River who are not allowed to catch any salmon because the factory ships have destroyed the population. And I've interviewed a woman who sat in a tree on her property for 30 days to try to stop a pipeline that was unnecessary and dangerous, and all sorts of stories like that. And in fact, I made a film about a pipeline in Appalachia that people said, we can't stop it, it's too big, it's too many energy. Be happy to show that to the town so you can see what happens when people get together and say, no. I do have one question for BlueWave and one for the planning board. Helen's contention is that they're trying to rush an incomplete proposal in to get grandfathered in before new laws come into effect. So I'm wondering if the planning board will go through that list item by item in a public meeting to make sure that this application is complete, or just tell them to come back when it is. As someone who's not a lawyer, I don't understand why they're here when the application seems incomplete. So that's my question to the planning board. My question for BlueWave is it your intention to try to force this through if it's clear that the entire town, minus maybe a handful of people, are opposed to it? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm getting tired. I clearly forgot the first question already. So speaking generally, the planning board receives applications and they may or may not be complete. They may or may not have all the information that we want. And so part of our job is to go through it and figure out what's missing and then ask the applicant. We do need to, the applicants have rights too, and we have to ask them. So that absolutely, everyone in this room has rights. That's why we're here. This is the process. There was a second question about what your intent is.
This is a process. We're here to hear your feedback, and we're going to try and accommodate as much as we can.
That's not why I asked you, I don't think they're trying to force it through. Virtually the entire town is opposed to it. That's a yes or no.
My answer is what I said. I'm not trying to be coy. We're here to hear the input and make adjustments as necessary.
All right, anybody? I don't know which of you raised your hands first, so now we have 3 of them.
Hi. I did some searching. I was actually looking through all the projects that BlueWave were claiming on their website, and the large majority of them do not include BES systems. One of the ones that I found, BlueWave, I'm just asking a question to you guys, so if I can have
It needs to come through me, please.
Okay, yeah, sure. So according to this, it says, and it was mostly hidden, but it does cite that one of their projects on 45 Oak Street, Douglas, Mass, maybe? It says sediment laden runoff and discharge from the construction site on 25 Oak Street BlueWave Solar project continues to impact the neighborhood and our water resources each time it rains. Oak Street down to Park Court, Douglas, and holds all these ponds. There are cold water fisheries. Tests results at the construction site now show show no heavy metals, but 6 PFA chemicals, as well as total phosphorus. And I believe I read something, and I could share this with the planning board. So this to me shows a threat to our water stream by this company. And they could speak to this. I believe they're getting fined by the town $200 or something like this. I could share. But my party team decided on that this is not a health safety risk, and that's the way it's coming off. So I'm just curious, and that's fine, that's totally within your right. I think most people disagree, but I'm wondering if you could maybe share why you think it's not a health and safety risk to this town, because I'm very curious and would love to think that it's not, so I would love to be convinced.
I don't think I've spoken on whether I think it is or not. I'm agnostic. I don't think we have enough information. I think that we're going to an engineer to try to find someone who has both independence and is qualified to speak to what the issues are. And I think that I will say I have a lot of respect for town meeting. And so the bylaw was passed in 2017 by town meeting. And until town meeting decides to change it, it is the bylaw that governs the town. And as a member of the planning board, that's kind of our charge. So the point is to follow the process as described, use town council to guide us in the legality of things, and try to understand the proposal as deeply as we can, so that we can come to good and hopefully fair for all. But you know, it's a tough thing. It's not. It is not. It is a project that's going to implicate or to affect people if it goes through, and I don't know if we can stop it. I don't know if we can. We're in the process of exploration, and that, as far as I understand, is the process. This is a hearing to understand the issues and try to dig into them. You had a first question.
Again, I can talk.
Great, I thought it was to you.
A site in Douglas that we have just recently finished construction on. I think it was in 2024. During the beginning of the construction, there was some, I think it was a higher rain period, but there was a washout in the northeastern corner of the site, and it went downhill into a pond. And we worked with both the Douglas Conservation Commission and the neighboring Conservation Commission, Sutton, to do testing and remediate and fix the situation. And subsequently, they stopped construction. They then released that, and the project is finished. So everything is repaired.
I'm going to just address a question in the chat, which I'm quite honestly a little. Steve Coyne, I don't know if he asks, but points out that I am a maker of hay in Worthington, and wonders whether I should either disclose that fact or recuse myself from this conversation. I'm a maker of hay in Worthington. That is true. I'm not sure that that means that I'm biased in this case, but know that I need to disclose this. That perhaps I have a conflict of interest. I'm not, I don't think I'd agree with that, but I make hay. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Julie again. I'm just gonna go ahead and piggyback off what Emily said, that yeah, there were PFAS found in the waterways down there. They didn't really respond to what the mitigation process was for that and how long that tends to last in water. And that is a state concern of the health board along with many people. And there have also been, just so we are aware, the sediment runoff from these kinds of issues when, proper runoff isn't controlled, that really affects the the water biome. It happened recently in Goshen and Williamsburg. There was a lawsuit from a solar farm out there. They paid out $1.4 million because they polluted the Millbank River with sediment. It was a big problem. They didn't follow through on the environmental protections that they should have. And that wasn't BlueWave that I know of. I believe it was a company out of Pennsylvania. However, that is just to point out that these issues happen. We are right next to, we carry, the Westfield is a federally, Westfield River is a federally protected river. And from my understanding, it still is, even under this administration. So what's the long-term impact and effect and how do we fix something like that? If there is this sediment runoff, right, and it starts to go into these federally protected waterways, who pays for that? Is it now a state issue?
So I don't know that I can answer the who's pays for it piece, but thank you for bringing that up, bringing it back, because I did have follow-up questions. It sounds like there are PFAS or some forever chemical found in the tests. Did that originate from your project? And second, my understanding of the proposed project is that it has almost no ground disturbance. There's some driveway work and some drainage right around the driveway, but the actual racking is all, I believe, going to be driven. And the fence posts, I believe, are also pounded or driven. So there's very little disruption of the sod itself, except maybe vehicle traffic. So I'm curious about the project that's being referenced. Was it a similar project, or was there more ground disturbance, and what caused this?
Yeah, sorry, I did a bad job of explaining that project. It was a forest conversion, so the trees were cut, and it had some very large stormwater basins that were being installed, and it was in the process of building the stormwater basin that this issue happened. It was a while ago, and I was not responsible for this, so I'd like to go back and get my facts straight, but my memory was that there was a scare of PFAS, and then the energy testing was done. We did the testing, we paid for it, we accommodated with the conservation commissions as much as we could. The PFAS was not there, or it wasn't related to our project. I will find the details and come more prepared, because I don't know all those details. But that project was a forest conversion. That all happened during the civil war. That was trees that had nothing to do with solar. So it was just whatever there was, it was the sediment that was on the site. We take sediment leaving site very seriously. We don't, that was not a success, and we worked hard to fix it. That's one of the things that we have to take seriously.
Gabriel, I think you were next.
Gabriel Woodruff, Airhill Road. I want to ask you a question, I think, for council. Am I to assume that zoning by right does not supersede state environmental laws and federal laws? And last I checked, Massachusetts had very robust environmental laws. So I don't understand, I understand past precedent, there's also been increasing science and data on the danger of these large industrial solar fields. And I don't believe we should approach this process believing that we can't prove, if we have to, in a court of law, that there is a health and safety risk and hazard for this development here in Worthington. Council, can you speak to that? Because I heard about, because zoning by right does not allow you to build a house that's going to pollute the field around you. And there is zoning by right to build houses on one's property.
So the purview of this board is to only apply the laws and rules and regulations that relate to this permitting process. So they are applying your local bylaw as well as the zoning act, general chapter 48. If there are other laws and rules and regulations that the project needs to comply with, they don't need to comply. But this board doesn't have the ability to deny this project off of a concern or a law or rule or regulation that doesn't exist within their purview. And so if someone has a right to build a single family home, another law or rule or regulation that might apply to them might be Title V, might be septic. And that's something the Board of Health would administer, and that needs to be designed and implemented and put in place consistent with those laws. And that's something that is operated through the building permit process as well. But for example, if it was something that needed site plan review, the Board of Health septic permitting process might run parallel with, but is different from this process. And so I understand that folks are very concerned about these projects, and I don't, I think that what I said originally is completely right and maybe has been misinterpreted a bit by some of the comments I'm hearing. So to clarify again, solar protections are extremely secure in the law. And in order to be able to defend a denial, if one were to come out of this, there would need to be evidence of a serious and legitimate public health, safety, and welfare concern that is grounded in your bylaw. And I'm not saying there is or there isn't. And as the chair has correctly said, this is the process for vetting this out. But I would be remiss as your town council if I didn't come in and tell you what the law is. Because if there is a denial, I'm going to be defending it in court. So again, the protections are very strong, but they are not absolute. But there are limits, and they are tied to public health, safety and welfare, in your particular zoning bylaw. So if that clarification helps, I don't know, but.
We wait for it to sue, we deny, because we don't necessarily defend it in court unless they sue or deny.
The question was whether BlueWave is threatening to sue, and the answer is no, not to us anyway. You've gone, so I'll go to the person back who hasn't spoken. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Amy. You got the mic.
I just had a quick point when you said there wasn't much impact of the construction. So each post that gets pounded into the ground impacts the soil, its clay, and how many 7,400
Not that many posts. That's how many panels there are, but.
posts, okay.
I don't know how many posts.
So there's a lot. Each one could potentially poke a hole into one of those aquifers that run through. So it's really important that we have the hydrology, whatever it is, done. And I have a point that Matt made to BlueWave when they came to our house. He's the expert. I'm not sure. Can you just say what you were saying? The thing you do to.
Just go ahead.
No, I mean, because they're gonna be the pounders, and we chatted with them about that, they'll do the initial monitoring. They have to take initial, and then they have to monitor throughout the whole process. That house that was built in 1805, that you show on the top of that hill, that's got a dry stack stone foundation. It goes down 8 feet. You can walk around in there, no problem all day. But it has been there since 1805. and they're about to pound a lot of steel and a lot of wood through that clay layer. So, we did chat with them about that, and they have it on their list. But it definitely, it's gonna be an interesting thing. And as far as your monitoring goes for sound levels, again, same thing. You have to take base measurements, and then you have to actually monitor and track it. I do this for a living, and I do it all the time. And it's the public utility, so way to go. But this isn't their first rodeo, so they know that they have to do that.
And if I gave the impression that the construction will have no impact, I apologize. I think that there are a bunch of things to explore during the construction phase. The pounding, the appropriateness of the soils for pounding, and the noise are all things I would like to have an engineer look at. I think you are next.
Hi, my name's Anne Marie Crone. I just moved to Worthington. God, this is terrifying, guys. I just wanted to go back to the special permit. That's why we're here, right? What exactly is the land set for where they showed you half of the whole thing is going to be on a water, what was it, a water space area?
Water supply protection district.
Water supply protection area. Half of that array is on that, which you were all surprised about because you guys just got the information to them, going back to the idea that this plan may not be complete to you yet. Why are we talking about that? Why are we talking about the fact that that land, what is it for? It's certainly not for a solar array.
Well, I think that the water supply protection district is defined in the bylaws, and in the bylaws there's a bunch of you can do, you can use it for uses that are allowed elsewhere in town, but it requires a special permit in that district. So because the use is allowed elsewhere, it is a use that is allowed under special permit. The point of that is to basically give the town the ability to review that project before it gets built, and if it is going to negatively impact the water supply, to say no. So that it appears to me that the onus is on the planning board or the town to understand whether this project has a negative impact to the water supply, which is why we're looking to get an environmental engineer to try to understand what are the potential impacts. I was surprised by the plan they showed, because up until this point, I had understood the water supply protection district to be quite a bit further north, so only a few of the panels were in it. Well, maybe a quarter of the panels were in it, but certainly not the equipment pad and certainly not the battery. The map they showed, it's significantly to the south and it includes the pad and the battery, and that is definitely going to enter into the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Steve, you were next.
Again, question for the town council, and reserve the right for follow-up depending on the answer. In your opinion, can this board deny the special permit tonight based on the fact that the application is incomplete?
Go ahead.
In my opinion, that is not a defensible denial. I think it is expected that a project of this size will continue over a number of hearings. It's very common to get an initial application, and this one is quite lengthy, where a board has follow-up and wants additional questions. My opinion is that if the board denies this tonight after one session of a public hearing, on the basis that the application is either incomplete or that the board wants additional information, and that's appealed, we're just gonna all be back here again. If you're lucky. If you're lucky, the court's gonna give you a chance and send it back here, as opposed to just telling you to issue it outright. So the risk, if a board thinks it was arbitrary and capricious to deny an application, the board has two choices. It can send it back to the board and say, do more work, or it can say, you know what, I don't think that, I think that's futile, so I'm just gonna, order some corrective action. So I would recommend against that. And I would recommend giving the board an opportunity and the board, choosing to take the opportunity to thoroughly vet the project before making a decision.
Our question is then, in your opinion, should the board just continue the hearing right now and until another date?
That I don't have an opinion on. It's up to the board to decide when they use the time tonight to gather all the information they need. I don't know if there are additional questions they have for the applicant, if they want them to do some homework in the meantime. So I can't speak for the board in that regard. And what is the appropriate time today to continue is not a question for me.
We are 3 hours in, so, might be the appropriate
I can't guarantee I live the furthest, so.
Thank you for your answer. Mark?
I think my aim tonight was to hear everyone's concerns. And so I was expecting to go until either I fall asleep or there's no one else who wants to talk. But thanks, I'm always happy to go home, so. Yeah. Helen? Sorry. Go ahead, Helen, you've only gone once.
The one thing I find that nobody's really talking about, which would stop this whole project, is it's a Massachusetts foreign limited liability corporation. If they cannot provide the financial backing, whatever is necessary for their 20-year lease, it's a moot point. It's a moot point. Because otherwise, somebody's going to get stuck with a bill, and I'm not interested in another 2.5 overriding. Thank you.
I'm not sure I totally understand. I think what you're saying is that, but I think I'm asking for clarification. I think what you're saying is that there ought to be funds to decommission this, which there is provision for, so that's why I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Is it in the bag? You have it.
Well, we don't currently, obviously, because they're in permitting, but that is the idea, is that the town would hold those funds. I'm not totally clear on the mechanism, but.
I mean, decommissioning is certainly an issue that you would discuss with the applicant during the process. Whether the town held the funds, whether it was a bond, I mean, those are the things that we can discuss, but it's not uncommon in projects like this.
Yeah, and I believe in our bylaws it is actually required, so.
If they go bankrupt, you're happy, right?
I'm happy, at least we'll have money hopefully to pay for removing it. I think Helen.
I think I can help them. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify something that the attorney said earlier, and that was that the planning board had to follow the bylaws of the town and understanding this was a by right lease. But there's also something that's really important in Massachusetts, and that is case law. And that is a big provider of how we move forward. And I remind us again that case law says that filing an application that's lacking the required information is not a valid application. And not standing, I definitely have the planning board talk to the attorney about this, but this isn't a valid application that was filed. It was filed quickly in order to take advantage of A, the town, and B, the tax credits and financial credits coming out from the state and federal government. It's not a filing. I also wanted to say one other thing. Art, you had said that the applicant or BlueWave had rights, and actually they don't have rights. They have responsibility. It was their responsibility to provide us with all the information for us to make a decision, or for the planning board to make a decision. The fact that you have questions isn't uncommon, of course you would, but that give you enough information to be able to get your questions answered. So that is something that I wanted to make sure you said, and I had one more thing, and I can't remember it, and I'm sure everybody's happy about that. Thank you very much. I'm happy if anyone wants to share research, any boards in town that want to understand more about what their responsibility is to the process, happy to go over the research. There's a number of us that are put in. Again, we've known about this for about 20 days max. So we've got plenty to share and plenty more to do.
Thank you. I wanted to offer one perspective.
Sure.
Today, the special permit and also the site plan review, it's a zoning and land use permit. There are many, many permits subsequently that we will get that I think is what you're referencing in some of the items that were listed.
You can make a decision without it.
When you're thinking about zoning and land use, you can, but the question is, can this use of the land happen? So it's not that we're trying to hide things. We don't know the battery. We don't know the panels. We don't know the racking. We're not trying to say that we do. We're here to say this project in this spot with these setbacks, we think it complies with the bylaw. We're happy to engage in conversation with them.
Thank you. Gabriel.
2 quick questions. I think there's a difference when the board keeps talking about, we're talking about whether the application is incomplete, and what that means, and then Helen's advocating that there's another word for it, which is a not valid application. And it seems to be that would be pretty different in terms of how it might sift out, possibly in court. So I'm interested in response to that. Also, I'm curious, in terms of compliance, let's say this moves forward, let's say all these stipulations are provided. Does BlueWave help pay for us to hire additional, compliance officers to make sure that the construction, the things they say they're doing happen? I can't possibly think you're asking for our building inspector, who, as much knowledge as they have, this seems to be a particular, unique, complex project with many different facets, and that seems an undue burden to put on our building inspector, and that we would need to have a more robust compliance team. And would BlueWave provide funds for that, or would that be something the town would either just not really be able to handle at the detriment of its residents, or would we be able to hire someone?
Okay, I think the first question was, I just blanked on that. Oh, is the application complete or is it invalid? And I think you just spoke to this when you told us that your opinion was that we can't deny this application tonight because it's, so I'll let you go again at it.
I'll start by saying I don't know what you mean by invalid applications. They have a right to apply for uses that are allowed under the zoning bylaw, and a process, and this is the process, exists for that to be vetted through, and this is the first night of that. So honestly, I don't know what you mean by an invalid application. It just is my opinion, somebody who practices in this area regularly, that it will be difficult to convince a court that an application was given its appropriate relief under the process if you deny it on the first night because you want additional information. That's just my opinion. No one ever has to follow my legal advice or agree with my opinions, but that is my opinion as someone who does this work. I don't know what you mean by an invalid application. For example, they're not applying for a use that's not allowed. They're not, at the zoning board asking for a use variance where they can't have one. So I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Do you want me to speak to the second point? Yes, conditions involving having the applicant pay for inspections during construction and post-construction are also common, and there is a mechanism in the law, it's similar to the 53G statute. We're talking about section 53G and a half that would allow the town to hold funds that are provided by BlueWave and a special account to be used for payment of consultants, payment of inspectors, and things like that. So yes, that mechanism exists. So in the law, it is not uncommon.
No,
No,
I feel like I read or heard that at some point, if we deny or don't go through this process to like a certain level, we lose the ability to provide conditions for BlueWave. So like there's a.
Should we address that issue?
Yeah.
So what sometimes can happen is if you deny an application, this is what I was speaking to earlier, if you deny an application, and if BlueWave were to appeal that to court, and if a court were to agree with BlueWave, they would say your denial was improper. And then there's two basic avenues of remedies. One is either the court sends it back to you and says, you know, I don't think you considered this well enough. I think there's merit in hearing it again. I want to give you an opportunity to hear it again. And there's one where they just say, you shouldn't have denied it, and I'm ordering the building commissioner to issue the building permit. The risk in that is there's no conditions attached to that, right? Because you don't have the decision. And so one thing that we always recommend for almost any application that's not solar specific is you always vote in the affirmative, and if it fails, it fails. If it passes, it passes. If you vote in the affirmative of a fully vetted decision with conditions, I'm in a better position if a court disagrees to at least say, well, this is their decision. You said the no was wrong, but can we keep all the yes stuff? You know, like if you're going to order it subject to what it would have been, or, you know, there's some mechanisms to make it a little better that way, but yes, the risk of a denial is it gets flat out overturned. And, you know, every judge is different, or it depends. Land courts, superior court, what judge you get, what take they take on the case, what remedy they issue, and a lot of that has to do with whether or not they feel like there's any point in coming back to the board. So I think that's probably what I'm speaking to. Yep.
Let's do
One question, would 61A still be valid with this application? Or do they lose it because they no longer will be really under agricultural horticulture? So how does that work?
I believe 61A still applies, but.
There are some amendments. There were some amendments to 61A in the last couple of years that allow solar projects on an agricultural site without losing the agricultural protections. And I think that's why the applicant was talking in terms of a pilot. Kind of replaces the ability for the town to get some tax revenues out of the projects. And again, I know it's a great question. It's not really a question for this board. It would be something that gets handled through the assessors and what have you. But there was some amendments, I want to say, in the last 2 or 3 years that involve 61A in solar and agriculture specifically.
Well, the only reason I asked this question was the fact that if it is no longer going to be under 61A, then perhaps the seniors would have to pay the five years back taxes, I believe, on the property. But there again, it opens up the possibility that the town would be able to buy the land and maybe we could have it preserved. And I think it's something that we could look into because it is not agriculture really, and then it won't be horticulture.
So, unfortunately, Dick Wagner, Board of Assessors, left, so he can't speak to it.
Well, that's why I say it's so important that we look into this, because you could say the whole thing, you just say it's going to be land preservation. This property here, and I guess there's going to be 2 or 3 others in town that I'm hearing, and we could just save our town.
So my understanding is that the dual use does maintain its 61A certification. Until we'll learn more. I think that we've asked for the application materials that BlueWave submitted to DOER around the dual use photovoltaics. So hopefully that'll clarify. There was another point, but there's, you know, the planning board has its job, but if people want to figure out creative ways for the town to purchase the land, then go for it. It's not going to be the planning board driving that process because this is enough.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hamilton from West Chesterfield. I'm actually on the planning board observing. I feel your pain. The question is, what specific use in your zoning code is this allowed as of right?
Section 8.5 governs large-scale ground-mounted solar installations, I believe is the title of it. So that's the there's a full section, I mean, it seems pretty clear.
I just wondered if it was trying to go in under agriculture, in which case I didn't understand the definition, so thank you.
We keep hearing, with conditions, so maybe not tonight, but maybe at the next meeting, we can start with what is the range of those conditions? So one of them is the pilot, which will pay back the town in terms of he's saying, no, it's not. So that's why we keep hearing, okay, we can approve this with conditions. What is our range in conditions?
Yeah, it's a great question that I would love to know the answer of, and it's why we hired a consultant to help us. Town council's telling me that pilot agreements can be part of the conditions. I was under the impression that they can't. So that's a question, evidently. But
You folks wouldn't work it out, it would be that it gets worked out. That's all. It wouldn't, the terms of the pilot wouldn't be a condition, the existence of the pilot would be the condition.
So, along those lines, let's say the pilot is established and there's income from the pilot, and on the drawings, and this is true of many projects in Worthington, the actual setback line, the right-of-way is not defined on the drawings. So somewhere in between the center of the road and some setback, some right-of-way line, Worthing owns that property. So could the pilot not make up for the fact that screening is slow going and use the pilot to enhance the screening as minimally as described in the bylaw?
So I would put it differently. I don't think the pilot agreement is part of that process. I think we can simply condition screening to be, I mean, screening is, it's a wide range of possibility. It is a negotiation with the applicant. I mean, if we say we need 7,000 trees planted, they might balk at that. But that is definitely the part of what we want to explore. Buffering with earthen, mounds is contemplated. I don't know that that's the right solution for this site, but I think that from my perspective, conditions are much more able to address things that are listed in the bylaw as concerns, like the aesthetic concerns or screening, than like I don't want to hinge them on a pilot agreement, which is sort of not our business on some level. Right? That's a taxation assessor's business. Not...
Yeah, it just relates to what the conditions are that we can control and how. So I think in the next iteration of the drawings, the town's right-of-way, the property line, the fence line, the setback line all have to be better defined. They're tough to read on the drawings, and they all stack up on each other.
Yes, I would agree that they stack up, and there's a lot of stuff on that stack. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, I'm not no hands. Online is quiet. There is a question in the chat. Could we limit the size of the solar field? And can we designate a wider setback from residents such as Belchertown's 150 feet? So I think that my interpretation of that, or my initial response to that first question, can we limit the size of the solar field? I'm going to defer to town council because I feel like that's a restriction or regulation that we would have to have a good reason.
Exactly. So the minimum dimensional requirements for the project are set by the bylaws. So you can't increase them. You may, through conditions, if you said it's specifically necessary to mitigate something, be able to have a greater buffer or something like that. It's specifically necessary because of this project on this site relative to specific other people. But you can't just say, oh, the bylaw requires 150 foot setback. We're going to say it's 300. Those are set. Applicants are entitled to know what's required before they apply. And as far as limiting the size of the project, I think that would have to be because of some particular reason. If there was a particularly here where we're talking, wells and what have you, we would say, well, we can't have it here because of its science, that it caused it to be smaller in some regard, that might be defensible, but it really needs to be project specific and issue specific and mitigation specific, bylaw specific.
And so I think that the wider setback from residents, I feel like that is something that potentially could be addressed through conditions, but that's a sort of negotiation, because it obviously would have financial implications for the applicant, and they might not want to agree to that. Okay, anyone else? We're done. So I think that I wanted to give BlueWave a chance for final comments if they've got any.
No major comments, thank you. I'm sorry for the pain for everyone. We'll do our best to accommodate any requests.
Thank you.
Just on the issue of the site plan application in particular, I know there's been a lot of discussions and about completeness and what have you, and that does relate to your bylaw. If you want to have a conversation where we at least get the applicant to bring on the record as to the completeness status, because that ties to the timing of things, I think that is important.
So I think one of the things I've struggled with is our bylaws are kind of vague, and there are two processes here. There's a special permit process and site plan review process, and they have different timelines, and making them line up has been kind of a nightmare. So I think what she's referring to is basically asking the applicant if you're willing to agree, and I'm not sure, I don't know if you have an idea of exactly what we're asking, but yeah, go ahead.
So I think at a minimum, you want to confirm the applicant's position on whether or not they're saying their application is complete. Because we don't want to be in a position where you're fighting with them on site plan about whether it was complete or not. So if everyone agrees that it's still in an incomplete stage, such that the 65 days hasn't started running, that's fine. If the applicant said, hey, we think we're complete and we think that time is running or what have you, then I do think you should be discussing either an extension or some kind of agreement to have the site plan process track the special permit process so that it's, the decision gets filed. Similarly, or what have you, but I recommend a conversation while everyone's here because you don't want to be fighting about constructive approval.
I think it's okay delaying that conversation. Tonight was about the special permit.
Yep.
I don't want to muddy water and get into the site plan review unless you really want to.
We're not noticing site plan review.
Oh, I thought they were both on the first. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Okay, no, my apologies. I thought they were both on for tonight as part of the conversation. Okay, so that's just a separate conversation. And you're, okay. All right. My apologies. I thought that based on questions asked, it was, all right. So I take.
Sorry for the confusion.
Sorry. So you haven't seen that complete and we're just not going to talk about it.
Okay, so I think that I would like to entertain a motion from the planning board to continue, perhaps.
Do we need a specific date or just to continue?
We need date, time, and place. And I don't know how people are feeling about meeting in this space versus the school. I forgot to ask the school what dates might be available.
This is fine.
Okay, so then place will be here. Do we have a date?
I make a motion to continue the hearing to January 8th.
Kate makes a motion that we continue the hearing to January 8th. We have a second at 6:30.
Yeah, you need time and place.
6:30 here.
6:30 here. We have a second discussion. You guys good with that?
It's further out than I would like, but we can, because the holidays make sense.
Yeah, I think the justification from my side is holidays make planning really challenging, and second, we're hopefully going to have an environmental engineer any day now, but they need some time to look at it and get us responses, so hopefully that's enough time, but.
Did you say the date again?
January. All right, all in favor? Aye, I think that's unanimous. All right, so that continues the hearing. That's technical. And I hope that we see you guys back January 8th. There will be meetings to discuss site plan review prior to that. We're waiting to hear back from these folks, so. There you go.
Before everybody leaves, I would like to mention that the police chief has informed me that people parking on the sidewalk, he's letting go tonight because the room is full. You cannot park on the sidewalk. We always used to be able to, because there was no sidewalk. Now there's a sidewalk, and you cannot park here. So next time, do not do that, please. Thank you.